Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The show starts in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
The following is a world-class Bullshitters exclusive.
We're back. It's Tuesday, and it's time to submit to the High Council here on World Class Bullshitters. I'm your host, Jeff Hicks, and with me tonight is my co-host, the one, the only ScriptDoctor.
Hey, how's it going? I'm your substitute co-host here today. We'll be taking attendance, and I expect very many funny names on that list.
Well, speaking of the list you're talking about, we can give a shout out to some of them, like Sam Owen. We have Garth Vader. I love that name always.
Me
We
too.
have Elizabeth Young. Yeah, because like there's a couple different Garths, but there's only one Garth to me, and that's Garth Algar from Wayne's World. So I just like to imagine Garth's voice doing all the Darth Vader quotes. That would be
And the hair, yeah.
oh my
Coming
god.
out from under the helmet.
If I ever meet Dana Carvey, that's what I'm going to ask him to say.
As Garth, yeah.
He is a dead man. Anyway, quick other shout outs to people like Joseph Bienowicz. We also have Adama, Shrebels08, Miss Ninja Julian, and a whole lot more like Rita Source. And folks, if we kept saying hail to everybody in the chat, that's how we'd spend the show. But maybe we'll do that in the near future. I'm getting closer and closer and closer to finishing Wokebusters. We're at I think I have 10 pages left. I've been a little under the weather, so I haven't gotten as much stuff done as I've wanted to, but it's okay. Things have been going great, so I can't complain here. Now, folks, before we start tonight's show, which we're going to be talking about the live-action Legend of Zelda movie, the sad state of Marvel, and whatever else organically pops up between the two of us, remember, today's episode is brought to you by me and my comic book, Stealing Solo. It answers the greatest what-if question of all time. What if a group of disgruntled Star Wars fans kidnap Harrison Ford and force him to remake Star Wars in their basement? That and a whole lot more is answered in what has been called the greatest Star Wars parody since Spaceballs. Now, I know a lot of you have purchased the book. I want to thank each and every one of you. We have copies that are going to be left through the holiday season, and then the book will be gone forever. So go to stealingsolo.com, which the website is powered by Shopify, so you get all their great safety and security, and get your book shipped out as early as tomorrow. I have a stack here that I'm going to be taking to the post office in the afternoon. So folks, whoever listens to this now live or on the recording tomorrow morning, make sure you go to stealingsolo.com to get yourself a copy of the graphic novel. And get ready for Wokebusters, folks. That's the event of 2024. So, Script, we did not have a show last week because it was Halloween. Did you watch any horror movies? Did you do anything? Did you, I don't know, enjoy Halloween season? Because I know I did. I went pretty hard in the paint. I watched probably 45, 50 horror movies over the month. I watched all my favorites. I watched new ones. I watched bad ones. I watched good ones. I did it all, and I feel like I'm ready for the next, couple holidays to pop up. But Halloween was a huge win in 2023 for me.
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't watch too many horror films. I enjoy horror films, but I've never been a diehard fan of them. I do like some of the funnier ones. Like I like Saturday the 14th. I think that's a funny horror film, like horror comedy, but not really. Halloween itself, like towards the end of the month, I had to go to a lot of birthday parties because I have a lot of friends who were conceived around Valentine's Day. And on Halloween itself, we did something different in my building because I live in an apartment building, a small apartment building, but a building nonetheless. But we, the residents that were here, the ones that didn't go to parties or whatever, because most of us are all in our mid to late 30s, we set up a cool little thing in the vestibule where we would be there and we'd, greet the kids, hand out candy and stuff. We did that in shifts. So I ended up doing 2 shifts because we had kids starting as early as 4 o'clock in the afternoon and went as late as 11:30 at night. And these are legit kids. Like the oldest we saw were 12 and their parents were with them and all that stuff. And I think they were bussed into the neighborhood or what have you, but we barely had enough candy to cover the whole night, which was great because I don't eat much candy, but some of the other guests, because we all pulled in a lot for this because we didn't want them coming to the building, going to every door and then causing a ruckus for some of the other people that are a little older and sleep early. So we did it out front and we decorated it and everything. And there's a lot of kids and a lot of cool costumes, more inventive stuff than I expected. It looks like this year kids actually and their parents, I guess, help them make costumes as opposed to going to the store and just picking up a an already established made costume thing. So it was cool. Some of the costumes I'd love to talk to you guys about, but they're a little controversial when it comes to, healthcare and whatnot. So I don't want to get this channel in trouble for it. But there were some really clever ones. I thought it was nice.
I went over to a friend's house to give out candy because, that's what you do. But it was really cold. I'm talking like almost to freezing temperatures. I think it was like 35 or 36 degrees. So it was a little slower than your usual Halloween here. And they have a strict 8 o'clock end time. It's like from 6 till 8 is Halloween trick-or-treating in my area, which I get it. You want kids to be safe. I'm not here to get all whatever. But I remember being a kid, like you'd start around 7 and you'd go till 10 o'clock, maybe 11, depending on because my mom always took me and we'd hit multiple neighborhoods. So, things have changed. I'm a lot older, but it was a lot of fun. The one thing I did notice, DC heroes were basically non-existent. I saw Blue Beetle and I saw one other. I saw the Flash. I didn't see a single Batman, but I saw countless Spider-Man. So when I say to people, I would argue that Spider-Man's the biggest superhero of the generation and moving forward will remain the biggest superhero. I think I'm right, man. Those kids, everybody loves Spider-Man.
I don't disagree with that. I think in the last 25 years, there have been more successful Spider-Man movies than there have been Superman movies. So that's the mere fact of it. The popularity is there. The character also transcends generations, just like all the others. But he's just had more theatrical wins in this century than the other characters right now. But I saw very few superhero costumes. I saw like maybe 2 Blue Beetles. I saw a handful of Spider-Man, but almost nothing on the DC side. No other than Blue Beetle, like no Superman, no Batman. I never saw the Flash. Saw a lot of Ninja Turtles and some really creative like zombies and costumes in that area, wolves and stuff, like kind of the classic stuff. It makes me wish I kind of, despite my best efforts in trying to convince my better half right now, I don't have a child, but if I did, one of the things that'd be highlighted would be going trick-or-treating, taking them trick-or-treating and doing like haunted house stuff with them. That'd be a blast because you get to see it through their eyes and like get reminded of yourself as a kid when you experienced it for the first time. That's one of the things I'm looking forward to.
Same for me. Like I'm almost ready to get to that phase of my life. I got a couple things I want to take care of, a couple books to do, a couple places to go and see. But that's something I think about. I'm like, yeah, when it comes time for that, I'm going to be just as excited as they are. I mean, Dion on the podcast, his family did it up this year. His son was Batman. Dion and his wife were Martha and Thomas Wayne.
Oh, God.
Dion's sister was the Riddler, and the nephew was the Joker. So they were a huge family costume of Batman. And I was like, that is awesome.
Being the Waynes, that's dark, man. I like
she
that.
Even had the pearl necklace, and they sent me a picture of it. It was awesome. They did it up right. They
didn't put the bullet wounds in their chest, did they?
I got to look at the pictures. I think they might have had blood on them as a joke because they did it to enter a local costume contest, and then they wore it out. But they wanted to do it upright to win.
Oh, cool! That is awesome.
I think when I have kids and they're young and they really don't have too much of a say, I'll just be like, all right, you guys are going to be some of the X-Men, and we're all going to do an X-Men group costume because I don't know, it's cool to be Gambit. You could wear that duster, stay warm during the cold Halloween season.
But, that's really cool. You got the dusters. Like one of the things I loved about the Ninja Turtle costumes is because I was a Ninja Turtle as a kid. I was Raphael. My mom sewed in an extra candy bag in the turtle shell, so I'd be able to zip it up, open, and I throw all my candy in there and then zip it back up and go get more.
That's awesome.
I mean, and I'm like, yeah, I'm repeating that for my kids.
I think my favorite costume as a kid was Indiana Jones because I was Indiana Jones for maybe 7 or 8 years, pretty much in a row. Like once I discovered Indiana Jones, I was like, I don't want to be anything else. And so I just I had a leather jacket as a kid. It was like one I inherited, and I had my little fedora and fake whip, and it was cool because I just carried a sack full of candy and it had Indiana Jones costumes on. But the one year I took it to the next degree. I took a tape recorder and I taped the Raiders March off of my stereo on a loop. And so when I walked around, it played the Raiders March and people were like, that's cool. This was also like at the early 2000s before, smartphones were playing
and MP3s
MP3s regularly.
Cool.
But was a fun time, man. I've never had a bad Halloween. The thing I like about Halloween, and this is my last point I'll make, so people don't they can wait for the Zelda stuff for just a second, is the fact that Halloween is the only holiday that grows with you appropriately. Meaning, as a kid, you got the candy and the costumes, and you have a good time. You may get a little older in your teens, but you still go to Halloween parties and you still dress up to some degree. Then you get to college, and that's when Halloween's the shit. Because you dress up, everybody dress up, you get wasted, you go to these parties, you don't even remember half the stuff you do, but it's always a good time. And then when you're at our age range, people still want to celebrate Halloween. So, like, I went to a Halloween party on Sunday night before Halloween. It was great. I met so many cool people and had a wonderful time. So, Halloween, you never grow out of Halloween, and that's what I love about it.
Yeah, I just wish it was a stat holiday where you actually had the day off.
Oh, I took the day off, dude. Like, I got up on Halloween. I went to some place for breakfast. I'm like, it's Halloween. Fuck everything else. So I went to breakfast. I bought a couple things. I had like an afternoon day drink. Watched some more horror. I watched Halloween 3, and then I went to, give out candy and got kind of, buzzed afterwards. So, 2023 was a win, man. That's all I could say.
That's pretty cool.
Now, folks, other things I want to say besides thank you for joining us tonight. The word of the day from Shrebbles08. The word of the day is twant. The twant Marvels. Star Wars. The twant awakens. Schindler's twant. There will be twants and a fistful of twants. The good, the I don't do the good, the bad, and the twant because that doesn't make sense.
For a few twants more.
There you go. By the way, I'm in the minority. I think that second film is the best one in that trilogy. Even though I love the good, the bad, the ugly, and Fistful of Dollars, I prefer that second one.
Yeah, I mean, I love all three of them, but yeah, I think for a few dollars more has something extra about it. I think it's more refined, maybe, because Good, Bad, and the Ugly is a lot longer than you expect it to be, but it doesn't feel long. However, for a few dollars more, everything just kind of feels like they hit the sweet spot with the pace. And I'm trying to remember much of the Fistful of Dollars because last time I saw it was last year, and I think I ended up liking a few dollars more and more on the rewatch than that.
I just really enjoy the actor Lee Van Cleef, and so he's a good guy in the second one, and then plays the villain in the third. So I'm like, oh man, I don't really like to see you, have to bite the bullet metaphorically and literally, but
But he played like Lee Van Cleef really nailed it. I mean, that opening scene with him in the kitchen or the dining room with the guy in Good, Bad, and the Ugly, it's played to perfection. And you're like, okay, I am totally like I want this villain to die, but I want to see how far he can go.
Dude, when I talk about like films that I love, because I watch a lot of schlocky shit, but then there's what I consider like actual art or whatever. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, that whole trilogy is just perfect. I bought it all on 4K. It's one of those, like, I'm sitting down, I'm getting a drink, I'm watching this, no phone, no nothing. So
8 hours
maybe I'll
later.
do a dollar trilogy. Yeah. You know what though? I will put in the time if it's worth it. One of my favorite ways to kill time is to just, get comfortable and watch good movies just on repeat. Don't, if I don't watch anything that's bad, I usually don't look at my phone. So
dude, that is my winter in some cases when there's like 3 feet of snow outside and I have no errands that I have to do and I just want to like decompress from a writing assignment or something. I'll like put on Lord of the Rings trilogy. I'll put on some classic westerns, maybe some sci-fi, and I'll just kind of veg out a little bit, or maybe I'll put it on and I'll like do push-ups and lift some weights while I'm kind of listening, watching to it at the same time, just to, kind of recapture, the first time experience that audiences have and be like, okay, am I doing this in my work? Because sometimes you get reminded by great films that stand the test of time. And you just kind of want to figure out like, what's the secret sauce? Why does this do what it does? And you got to kind of have to remind yourself every once in a while. And nothing but way better to do that than finding out that, yeah, the nature has trapped you in your home as opposed to the government.
I mean, I guess the internet makes fun of Ohio, but I'm pretty happy in Ohio right now. So, we got it decent here. It's
yeah,
not
you got
perfect.
you have a theme song, Cleveland Rocks from the Drew Carey Show.
That's true, but if you live in Ohio, you know that Cleveland sucks. We all make fun of it.
That's the irony of it, right?
It's better than Detroit, but not by much. Let's see. The Legend of Twant, or Super Twantio World, if we're going to do some game titles, and Spider-Man: Far From Twant. That means Mary Jane is nowhere to be found. We saw his face. We saw how sad he was. Now, Script Doctor, this is later news. This was something that popped up in my feed right around dinner time for me. And so the word on the street is officially that The Legend of Zelda is getting a film and is no longer going to be a rumored part of this Nintendo cinematic universe. It is actually going to be its own live action feature. Now, my first takeaway from this news, besides, oh shit, a Zelda movie, I'm there, was a Nintendo movie is being made by Sony. That's kind of weird to me. What did you think about that?
I thought it was a little weird. I mean, because it's made by Columbia Pictures, which is, of course, a subsidiary of Sony, because Sony purchased them back in late 80s, early 90s, if memory serves. And it's like, oh, wow, Sony's kind of working with the competition. That's interesting. Now, fun fact, the Nintendo rights holders for The Legend of Zelda have been trying to make a Legend of Zelda game since 2008. That's when I first started hearing about it. I was only 2 years into the industry at that point. So they've been trying to do it for a while. The studio that I think had the rights first was Universal, and I was discussing on another stream how that changed to Sony had to have been some years later, because unfortunately, for any of you who are familiar with this certain producer, Avi Arad is producing this Legend of Zelda feature at Sony with Nintendo. And Avi is a good marketer, but he's not a good film producer. He takes a lot. I mean, he knows how to be a producer in the sense of taking credit for stuff he didn't do, which if you want to take a look at the Spider-Man films, that's a key point. You'll notice that he's not really involved in the Home trilogy of Spider-Man. And whatever your opinions are about them, they are incredibly well-performing films, which have a lot of positive critiques on aspects of it. Even though it's a bit too Iron Boy, and I completely get that perspective, it does have its moments. But Avi is doing this at Sony. The writer, who I've never heard of before, but has done some things I have heard of, and that's only because I think Colin Trevorrow took more of the attention on that stuff. That writer is the scribe for this film, and it's being directed by the Maze Runner director, who is a paint by numbers director, doesn't have much authorship in the stuff he works on, and he's also doing the Planet of the Apes movie that's coming out early next year.
There's another Planet of the Apes movie coming out?
Yeah. Yes, there is.
Now, is this going to be a continuation of that Matt Reeves trilogy, or is it a reboot, or is it?
It's hard to say.
That last trilogy.
It's hard to say, because it has all the same special effects as the Matt Reeves stuff. But I think it takes place several generations after the last one. I saw the trailer. It kind of was like, oh yeah, it's something. Didn't blow me away, but didn't make me say that I have to exercise caution on this. But yeah, looks like it might be a continuation. The chat is saying it continues. So Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes is the title, if I'm not mistaken. All I'll say is that, as excited as I normally would be for a Legend of Zelda film, the pedigree of the people involved in it on the studio side is not very good. It's kind of inbred, in my opinion. Because if you're looking for, like, it's not to be confused with purebred, which basically you get two of the same species that are not blood related, and then they mate and give you a beautiful puppy. This case here, it's like, oh, you've got the Maze Runner, and then you have the guy who kind of rode on the coattails of Colin Trevorrow to get here. And Colin Trevorrow was pushed as this breakout new film director until he annoyed Disney. And now he's kind of persona non grata to a degree. And you're also dealing with the guy who, the writer of this, has more story by credits, which means that he was in the room and pitched and got a small paycheck and a credit by. So he's credited on The Rise of Skywalker because he worked on the original screenplay with Colin Trevorrow before those two were picked off. He also wrote Detective Pikachu, which I saw, but I don't remember. So, I mean, that's not a good sign. I remember most of the movies I watch, if they're good at least, or egregiously bad. I don't forget terrible stuff. I've seen Man of Steel once, and I remember way too much of that film for my own liking. um, and so yeah, it's all I'll say is exercise caution. One good aspect is that Sony doesn't like to spend a lot of money, so it will force some creativity on a limited budget. But we'll see. We'll see what guiding hand Nintendo can do when it comes to executing this script. What are your thoughts, Jeff, on it?
So, years ago when there were rumblings or talks of a Zelda movie, I was a lot more excited. But then I would realize that there hasn't been really good video game movies. That we were living in the Resident Evil era. We were living in the post Super Mario Brothers movie from 1993. So
Yeah.
I am a hardcore Zelda fan. I don't have tattoos on me because I don't like tattoos, but my parents played Zelda, the original one, when they were pregnant with me. I inherited a Nintendo. I started playing Zelda at a very early age. Ocarina of Time was my first quest that I went on as a kid, and it changed everything for gaming for me. I am a huge Legend of Zelda fan. When I moved back home from California, the first thing I did to help, get things going is I bought the new Zelda game, and at night when I wasn't working, I'd sit down and play Zelda. I played through almost every game that's come out in the mainline franchise for consoles. I don't really, do handheld gaming that much because I don't have the time for it. But I love The Legend of Zelda. Link is my favorite video game character. Normally when I hear these things, I'm kind of like, wait and see. And, the people that are involved with the film, I'm along with you on being hesitant to just blindly jump into this. But I'm also not as worried as I would be with other properties. And I'll tell you why in just a moment. But overall, I was excited to hear about a Legend of Zelda live action movie. I really loved the Super Mario Brothers movie that came out this year. It might be my film of the year still. I got to go back and do our whole list for a little later on in the year on the channel.
Mm-hmm.
But I was invested. I liked what was happening because Nintendo is good and bad with their IP. Like, I understand people don't like a lot of Nintendo policies, and I'm in that camp too. I have a lot of issues with how they handle stuff, how they hold stuff back, how they manipulate the market, do these things. I'm well aware of how Nintendo likes to operate. But I do have to say, overall, they keep their IPs pretty tight, and I like that because I got to experience the Super Nintendo world at Universal before I moved back here, and it was branding done right. I felt like I was living in Nintendo world. Everything was great, from the theming to the food to the concessions that are not, in that part of the park, to the merchandise. Like, Nintendo made me feel like I was living in a Nintendo world. You add that on to the Mario movie, you add that on to some of the more recent mainline AAA games that they put out, the first-party games. I've been pretty happy with Nintendo. So this Zelda announcement is coming after a string of what I consider pretty good Nintendo wins. And I'm also not a Nintendo shill like some people that are like, I buy everything Nintendo. I've skipped entire generations. I did not invest in the Wii U. I thought the Wii kind of sucked after I waited in line for it for 13 hours. Like, I will give Nintendo praise, but I will also call them out on what I think is bullshit. With all that being said, though, I'm pretty excited. I'm pretty interested. Now, you mentioned Avi Arad, and I think while what you say about him is accurate, because I do have issues with how he handled the Spider-Man stuff and the Sam Raimi trilogy and the Garfield duo, one thing I like about Avi Arad is a businessman who really, some of the stuff he gets involved with, he only knows the base level stuff. And so what I'm trying to say is he's the kind of guy that I think will push for something like Ocarina of Time or something of a more traditional, medieval European looking Zelda film than some kind of, cutesy, weird hybrid, whatever.
Yes.
Because there are two distinct versions of Zelda in my mind. There is the traditional Legend of Zelda that goes up to the Wind Waker, and then there's the Wind Waker and that cutesy shit that I absolutely hate. And then it goes back to Twilight Princess, and it kind of regains what I would call some of its edge. Because Zelda is not an adult property whatsoever. But it also isn't kiddie like Mario. The puzzles require a little more thinking, even though they're kind of easy. The games have a deeper story. They deal with romance. They deal with things that aren't necessarily present in other Nintendo franchises. So to me, while Mario is the premier name in the Nintendo hat, I think Zelda's the crown jewel of quality, because those are the games that have the most and this is the right way to use it, the most diversity. The diverse stories, they take you to different parts of this fictional land. They deal with all sorts of different things. The gameplay changes. I think Zelda is their best, hands down. So getting a guy like Avi Arad, I think he's not going to look at some of the aspect of Zelda that I think are bad. I think he's going to look at some of the more basic stuff, and we might get a hybrid movie of, Ocarina of Time, or we might get a Link to the Past film. I'm just hoping we don't get some child Link and some child Zelda, because I think that's going to kill the box office. With Avi Arad behind the scenes, I think he's going to go for that, early 20s Link and Zelda, where you can kind of do a will they, won't they, sell the traditional stories, give you the right level of action and violence. And with these directors and writers, I don't believe that any people besides Nintendo and the people that are cutting the checks really have much of a say anyway. And so they're kind of just there in name only. I don't think they will have, I think they're chosen for the reason that you had mentioned, how they're just kind of a kind of a body in the room. And that might work out to the benefit, because are they real Zelda fans? Are they big? Do they understand it is what I need to know. And if it's Nintendo kind of pushing, controlling that, I feel okay, because look at Mario. I don't know exactly how much they had control over the Universal stuff, but I liked that Mario movie. They did it right. And so all of those things lead me to being positive about this Zelda movie. That's, a long way of saying, hey, bring it on.
Well, I mean, if the people at Nintendo, if they have final say on this, there's a better chance that they'll get what they are looking for, because they've essentially have a creative team that are yes men. They do assignments, they do what they're told, they do the bare minimum that's required of them to achieve the vision of the producers. Which, listen, if the producers have a good head on their shoulders, that can be a good thing. But it doesn't always work, because right now the Marvel method over at Disney is the producers are in charge and the directors and writers do what the producers say. And we've seen several examples since 2019 of how that hasn't worked out well. And that could be a pitfall for Nintendo if they can't actually find people that understand the general parameters required of telling fun and inventive stories, and also how to reconcile that with the lore that they've established over the last 40 years with these Legend of Zelda games. I mean, the very first Legend of Zelda game that came out for the Nintendo came in a gold case, and they really wanted people to love this game. And it was one of the first video games where your character had an inventory of different weapons they could use to solve problems in the game. You had the sword, you had the bow, you had the boomerang. Later on, you got like the hook shot a few games later, which was cool. Probably one of the coolest little devices in the Legend of Zelda games.
Agreed 100%.
And I mean, you like arcade games and Atari games in the 80s didn't have that much of versatility for your main character. Heck, you even got like the ladder, and you could carry the ladder with you and put it down and walk over, gaps in the old games. And if you got lost in the forest, you had to find a cool little puzzle to get out. Like, I love those original games. And I also love the idea that if you had full hearts and you held your attack button on your sword, you shot a laser out. And I'm like, that is super cool. You just turned a melee weapon into a ranged weapon, but only if you have your full hearts. And I'm like, that's cool, because you get hit once, you don't have that advantage anymore. So then you got to fight, tooth and nail on the normal side of stuff. And they kind of took that away in other versions or they changed it to the point where you just did a charge and it was the 360 thing, or maybe you had a part where you swung your sword and just threw out something randomly, as opposed to it being an actual charge or what have you. But yeah, it's there's a lot to pick and choose from traditional Legend of Zelda stuff. I think if they stuck it to more of like, stories about the Triforce in general and what that means, and how keep it simple and make it one movie that stands on its own, I think it'll have a better shot at resonating with audiences, as opposed to them. And what will likely happen, especially with Avi Arad in there, trying to make it into a trilogy before they even understand if the audience is liking their interpretation of the premise.
Now, I agree with that. But the one thing I will say in their favor is, remember how the first more of an unknown entity, while that film does have the seeds of a trilogy planted, it also acts as a standalone movie that if you never got another film, that was the only Spider-Man movie, you're like, well, that was cool. That's the entire story of Spider-Man in 2 hours and change. And maybe he didn't get the girl, but what else left is there for him to do? He got the suit, he got the powers, he fought his greatest villain, and We even got to see Aunt May get beat up and all that crap, and like everything that was like integral to the Spider-Man, like a certain era of Spider-Man, they got it into that film. I hope, me being an optimist on this one, I hope they go the same route. And while I do want multiple films, you got to get that first one right, because, Avi Arad is also responsible for the Amazing Spider-Man films. And those, man, they put the cart before the horse and the whole thing fell off a cliff.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, Avi is an advertiser. Like, that's his trade. That's where he comes from. He comes from advertising. He knew how to sell toys. He knew how to bridge with Marvel and get that line working well. And he as soon as he saw an opportunity where he can make more money as a film producer, he jumped on that. And he no longer sells other stuff, really. He only cares about movies, which I think is going to hurt him, because I don't think he's been paying enough attention to the market recently, because he did bungle the Amazing Spider-Man for Sony. He picked the people that were hot at the time. He thought it was a good idea to hire Alex Kurtzman to write Amazing Spider-Man 2, and jump the gun and decide, yeah, we're going to take Gwen Stacy out now, and we're going to try and get Mary Jane in there sooner. It's like, no, man, you had something on your own going on with that. And to quote you, they put the cart before the horse. And I'm so worried that Avi's going to do that again, because this is going to be the next franchise of his that he is going to sink his teeth into and not leave ever until he dies.
Well, if he does it smart, I mean, you got to get the right link. You can't, like, my nightmare scenario would be they make an Ocarina of Time duology or even trilogy where it's like the first movie is going to be a kid and then it sucks and they never get to the next one. And that's going to be all she wrote with Zelda. Like, I guess I'm just showing my bias here, and I will for a minute because I'm a fan, but like, don't put Kid Link in this. Kid Link is stupid. And anybody that disagrees, that's fine. You can be disagreeing with me, but what is interesting about Kid Link running around? Like, it's supposed to be a cipher for the audience. And like that like Ocarina of Time age Link is perfect because it doesn't make it a child film. Nobody wants to watch like a kiddie, like, you wouldn't want Zelda to be like a kiddified Willow, where it's even like, because Willow's got its edge, Willow's got its stuff, but you wouldn't want like a super kiddie version of that. You want to have your Val Kilmer guy, that that character that you can get behind.
That's Mardigan, should be Link. Yeah.
I think Link should be a silent swordsman. I think Zelda should be the traditional Zelda. I don't need to see Zelda as the lead of the film or some progressive change like that. It's like, look, it's a fairy tale. People like their fairy tales. Look at all the crap with Snow White. Leave it be. You got to remember, these big IPs are sacred to millions of people. And if they go the route that some of these movies go, you're going to get people that are going to complain. And, you're going to get the same outrage that, oh, these are, bigots, this and that. No, guys, we just like Zelda games the way they are. And Nintendo, they know what they're doing. They make Zelda a bigger presence in the games because I guess people care about that. But they also don't make you play as Zelda. They don't also make you, this isn't like the Sony game with Spider-Man where, well, you can only be Peter Parker for half the game, and then the other half you got to play as Miles Morales and Mary Jane and some blind lady and deal with all this other crap. That's an American thing. Nintendo knows how to treat their games in a way that they're evergreen. Like, even with Mario Wonder, it's a little samey compared to like the new Super Mario Brothers, but it's also a lot of fun, and it's still your classic Mario. And so I'm hoping against hope, and I'm staying optimistic that this Zelda movie is just a slightly, all ages, slightly violent, a little scary, because Zelda games are a little scary. Mm-hmm. And I hope they get the visuals right. That to me is, I know everyone talks about story on this channel, and I'm a story guy, but I'm also an artist, and I care if Link looks right. I want to see the Master Sword look the right way. All of those things are very important to me.
I think that stuff might be the easiest thing for them to get when it comes to Legend of Zelda, especially with Nintendo involved. So I'm not too worried about the aesthetic of it, unless somehow someone over at Nintendo decides, yeah, we're going to go, with that horrible live action, but we're going to cel shade it or use the type of palette from the cel shaded games that not a lot of people enjoyed. I'd be shocked if they did that, because I think Nintendo learned not to do that again for Zelda as
very
much.
Quickly.
But, yeah. And So yeah, I think the visuals is probably going to be the least of our worries. I bet you 2 years from now, when we get the first still shots and whatever casting, that'll be a good barometer over what to expect, at least on the visual side of things. It all comes down to, like, is that first trailer or that first teaser going to kick ass? And I know a lot of people want to have Link not say anything, but you have to have the main character say something to some degree. And we've already got a cartoon version of Link who was very smitten with the Princess Zelda, and yeah, he was a goofball, but he was a very competent warrior. And as I was mentioning on another stream earlier, it's like that's one of the things I'm worried about. If they try to give him, make him like a badass warrior, like someone who actually can hold himself, but they make him a little kind of goofy and mildly obnoxious slash nervous around, a pretty woman like Zelda. I think there's enough of a community out in the internets that are suffering from battered wife syndrome and might look at that as like them trying to emasculate Link as a character. And even if it's done impeccably well, they'll probably just focus in on the very things that they would otherwise attribute to him not being a male, because he says something stupid in front of the princess trying to win her over, and she just like, claps back and then, exit stage left sort of thing. And then he's like, well, I guess I'm not getting a kiss from her tonight. And then next scene, he's, fighting Ganondorf and all those things, and he's kicking their ass. And then they're like, yeah, it doesn't matter. He completely got cucked by Zelda. It's like, well, part of their will they won't romance is the woman rejecting the hero for different reasons as opposed to his lack of heroism. So
I'd like, it's funny, we were talking about the Dollars trilogy. Maybe make Link talk about as much as the Man with No Name.
Yeah.
I mean, you could convey, hell, let's take it a step further. Make him like the medieval version of that character, this like cool lone warrior. Because there are so many different interpretations of Link from Nintendo. And I'm trying to just take my fan hat off for a second and think what would be the best version to put on film as a first outing. And like, I mean, hell, you just kind of maybe even do the first Zelda where it's just you start out and you're on this adventure. You could tell like the story of Hyrule and the Triforce and Link and Ganon and Zelda. Maybe even, borrow a little bit from Ocarina, where they each have a Triforce and it's about, unifying them. But, I always thought that a Zelda movie and the aesthetic of Lord of the Rings would work. Like when I first saw Lord of the Rings, I was like, man, maybe they should do Zelda like this. And maybe that's what they'll do. We'll find out. It's not like Sony doesn't have the budget for this. It's not like Nintendo isn't one of the biggest brands on the planet and remains that way constantly. There's no reason to cheap out on this. This should look amazing.
It should. And if they do, listen, I don't want them to have an unlimited budget, because then all we're going to be getting is a bunch of post effects, visual effects. I wanted to see as much in-camera stuff as possible, which keeps costs low. And with the current administration at Sony likes to keep their budgets reasonable, and I think that can go a long way because it allows you to simplify your story. It's like, listen, if it's a basically rescue damsel in distress and get the first of the 3 Triforces, that's a great foundation to start with. Classic hero saves the princess, gets the Triforce, stops the bad guy. Simple plot, complex characters. Why is Link doing this? Is it for money, for love, for reputation? Any one of those things can work, and go on a journey and arc where he realizes he's found something more. Maybe even explore some of the lore of Hyrule as well along that, and its connection to Link and Zelda and so forth. There's lots to explore, but it's got to be tight. It's got to be simple, and I would prefer it to be an hour and 45 minutes long. just for one, you got the simple story from there, and 2, you get more screenings and showings per day. And if it ends up being a hit, it'll make a lot more money a lot faster when you're not scraping the edge of the 2.5 hour mark, as most films are.
Yeah, I when we talk about the Marvels in a moment, while I have very little interest in it, at least the positive is that it's short. It's the shortest one of all. And maybe we're out of the era of super bloated films. I know some people like them. They feel like they get more for their money. I just want to have a good time. I've seen great movies that are 90 minutes long. I've seen great films that are 3 hours long. But, you really have to be a special type of movie to go for 3 hours and have me going, yeah, man, I'm going to watch this again. Like, I don't think I've ever watched Avengers or Endgame since I saw it in theaters, like fully watched it. I've tried. I've watched most of it. I've tuned out at other points. I just don't like. I don't think these long films have the same rewatchability. But that might just be me.
They're few and far between, and it's usually the ones that have the rewatchability are done by filmmakers that have had at least a decade of actual filmmaking under their belt. Like Peter Jackson has some 3-hour cuts of the Lord of the Rings entries, which I can watch again because they're really well paced, and everything that's going on the screen is engaging, and it's a lot easier to do. The Russo brothers are TV directors who got their break with film through Marvel. And their Infinity War and Endgame films are decently paced, but they also feel like you watch it, it's like you could lose an hour easily from both of these films. And that's the issue that you have, especially with younger filmmakers. You got to earn that runtime. That's kind of like what I did. I did a tweet a couple of years ago that blew up because I basically said, these are the runtimes you need and to start with. And if you want to go more, you got to earn it. And then they all brought up Lord of the Rings. I'm like, yeah, Peter Jackson earned that runtime. He made movies for over a decade and tons of short films. He understands the value and the economy of the runtime. So he's able to, and on top of that too, you're adapting a story that it has stood the test of time for decades. Like people know it. You can see the story beats. You know how to organize that into a cinematic interpretation far easier than just trying to make something up on your own. Like you can't plan a trilogy of a brand new IP because you have no frame of reference and your audience has no frame of reference. So you're asking them to essentially sacrifice time to watch your film. You better not be wasting it, especially for a new IP or an adaptation of an existing IP. And in that regard, just like, yeah, okay, if I'm going to go see an adaptation of a character I know and it's not going to be a story I'm familiar with, they better knock it out of the park and it better be reasonable, because otherwise I'm going to be upset that I just wasted anywhere from 2 to 3 hours on this movie because some director just is not disciplined enough to realize that the good stuff should stay and the meaningless stuff needs to be cut. J.J. Abrams is a big proponent of that. His movies go a little too long.
Yeah, they exist. That's too long for me.
And they exist, yeah. And that's the case. Because here's the thing: audiences will surprise you. You can plan to the cow comes home your movie trilogy, but you put that first one out there and audiences don't respond to it, and you've shot the other 2 films already. You have just burnt all that money away because you now have to go back and reshoot. Like Lord of the Rings, they had it easy because like we know these books are successful. All we gotta do is stick as close to them as possible, and we are making our money back.
Who would you like to see as a filmmaker for this Zelda film? Folks in the chat, please let us know as well. But I can't think of anybody off the top of my head. Can you?
That's alive?
Fine. Give me a working director and somebody who may have passed away who would make the ideal film for you.
Oddly enough, because it was brought up recently, I think Tony Scott could make a really good fantasy film. Not Ridley. Ridley's done his thing, but Ridley's a little too self-indulgent. Tony Scott has a style. I don't know if it'd work well for Zelda, but he could definitely do a good fantasy film. For a fantasy side of things, let's see, director-wise, that's a little tricky because you don't have as many solid directors today that we did many, many years ago. But that's going to be tough.
Yeah, I'm looking at some great fantasy films, and I'm thinking, like, I don't want to say Peter Jackson because that seems so, like...
No, but you know someone who actually knows how to play with fantasy and also knows how to play with character? Matthew Vaughn is pretty good.
Oh, yeah, he is.
He has a style, and he knows how to incorporate colors quite well, too. So that could benefit a tale like Legend of Zelda.
Yeah, it's got to be a bright film. Like, obviously, you're going to have your dark moments, but you got to, like, have both.
You got to balance out the brightness to it. Trying to think. Joe Johnston is also really good at period pieces and style. I mean, he likes the golden age of America type of thing, but I think he might be able to pull off a fantasy vibe for a Legend of Zelda. He definitely understands love romances and unrequited love and whatnot. So that's also good. You can get a good performance out of actors for that. And he's a veteran director. He's been around for 35 plus years as a director. Man, I mean, it's tough, and that's actually a shame to the industry of Hollywood of who's being promoted and who isn't. Because we don't have those as many names at our disposal as we did 30 years ago, and the ones that we did have 30 years ago, they're kind of like in the dust right now, career wise or literally. I see people saying Sam Raimi in the chat. I think he's a bit too extreme. He's got a style of his that, I mean, you get, when you're watching a Sam Raimi movie, you know it's a Sam Raimi movie just by the cinematography alone.
That's the best part of it.
That is the best. Yeah, exactly. It was funny. I my girlfriend was watching the Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness the other day, and I would peek into it. And what's funny is that you can tell which was reshoots and which was the initial production based on Wu's hair, because it changes in length in a couple of different shots. It actually gets longer by like 2 inches. and you can tell that they reshot a few scenes as a result of that. Speaking of Sam Raimi.
I kind of like Darth Vader's. I like Del Toro as a choice from Darth Vader. I think that'd be interesting.
Guillermo del Toro would be great. However, if he got the job today, we wouldn't be seeing that movie till like 2040. It takes a long time to make a film.
But thinking about Pan's Labyrinth and just the creature design and how it's, what's really there on set versus what's augmented with CGI.
He would nail Ganondorf. Like, oh my God.
Yeah. God. And like, if they're not going to do a Breath of the Wild movie because you would never start with that. But like Ganon keeps evolving into these crazier renditions. Like I'd prefer like Ganondorf the man who then becomes the big beast at the end.
Yeah.
But like if you do the beast that's the size of a field or the dragon or all these other things, like it really opens itself up to limitless possibilities. And I know, it's super early in the whole life cycle, but at least there's something to, fun to talk about. It's not like, the downfall of most of our movie franchises. At least there's like something new to talk about. And this is what we all want, something different.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
and we need,
else you want to say about Zelda?
Yeah, I think we need this as a culture. We need an it may be, it's a transference from a video game to a film, but we need this injection of a kind of another avenue of IP. Because if that movie does well, it's going to open up original content in similar veins that probably won't perform as well or popular as Legend of Zelda, but it might actually get a niche audience that can sustain itself for a while. There was a period in the late 2000s and early 2010s where fairy tales were coming a little bit bigger. We got a lot of fairy tale films. We got Hansel and Gretel, Red Riding Hood, and those two are the ones that I can remember prominently. Not just in film, but also in television, because there was like the Once Upon a Time TV show and stuff. Like people were kind of like getting into that, and it had a little bit of a peak, but sadly, and this is really just out of the desperation of studios, sadly they didn't get the right creative people involved, and so you had the rise because, oh wow, these look interesting. This is a reminder of my childhood. Oh yes, this does highlight the fact that fairy tales, while written quote unquote for children, are gruesomely dark and disturbing overall in their messages. But they didn't hit the stride that they wanted to because they were more action-driven interpretations of these fairy tales as opposed to horror. Even when they did the Brothers Grimm with Matt Damon for that spell there, they kind of they hit the peak of curiosity for audiences, but they weren't able to hold on to them because they fell into the pit of contemporary essentially when it came to those films. And I think we might need a resurgence of that attempt again without modern day contemporary. Sorry, that's a little redundant. Without the contemporary takes that have been done in the past and what have been kind of pushed a little bit in this pocket of time here. If there's some way that they can recapture something authentic about those old Brothers Grimm fairy tales, I think like you could have a great romantic comedy with The Ridiculous Wishes. That's a tale where a wizard grants a guy 3 wishes and he accidentally gets his nose turned into a sausage because he's fighting with his wife. I mean, heck, Snow White. I mean, I know Disney's doing one and Daily Wire's doing one. Snow White is a comedy because, the evil queen is trying to kill this girl and she keeps surviving. That's a comedy premise. Like the seven dwarfs keep reviving her. Like she puts her in a corset or a lace, tightens it so tight that she can't breathe and kills Snow White. But then the dwarves come in and they cut her out of it and she breathes. She's alive again. And you can just picture the queen freaking out. Like, how's she alive still? I killed her. And then she gives her a comb that's poisoned and then it gets stuck in her hair and she dies. And the dwarf's like, oh, she got a comb stuck in her hair. Let's take it out. And then all of a sudden she revives. And the queen's like, holy crap, why? And then that's when you get to the poison apple. And then it finally sticks until the dwarves are like, no, you know what? Let's put her in a glass coffin. And because she's so beautiful, we'll put her up on a pedestal outside. And then a prince comes galloping by, sees the hot chick in a case. And he's like, you know what? That would look good next to my Spider-Man in its original box too. Can I buy Snow White? And the dwarf's like, no. It's like, I'll give you this much gold. And they're like, okay, sure. It's like, great, carry her to my palace. And then they trip, fall, and stumbles. And that stumble loosens the poisoned apple from her mouth. And she revives. And now that she's alive, the prince is like, you know what? I own you. So we might as well be my wife. And they get married and they invite the evil queen to the wedding. And when she realizes that Snow White's marrying the prince, she freaks out. And then the prince and Snow White torture the queen to death. It's dark comedy, but there's funny beats in that story that anyone who only saw the Disney version would never know.
I want that version put to film. I don't plan on watching either of the new Snow White films coming out because I don't really like the story that much. But that version might interest me.
No, that's the original version, and I'm not doing the best of jobs, but I'm just kind of summarizing it. But yeah, that's what it was. It's a very silly, dark, but funny tale, and you can have a lot of fun with it. There's a lot of Brothers Grimm's tales you can have fun with. There's another Snow White where Snow White has a sister named Rose Red, and they, for some reason, allow a bear that can speak English live with them during the winter. And then in the summer, when the bear goes back into the forest, they keep on, the girls, while they play in the forest, they keep on encountering this dwarf who gets his beard stuck in various things. And each time they have to cut him out. And while he gets his beard stuck in various things while he's trying to steal from things that he's found in the forest. And eventually you find out, oh, he stole the gold and he somehow put a curse on a prince who turned into the bear that befriended the two girls, Snow White and Rose Red. And the bear manages to kill the dwarf and then break the spell. And he's like, turns into a human. He's like, hey, you girls, you took care of me in the winter. You're beautiful. I'll marry you. And I've got a brother. So, each of us can have one of you. And they go off and get married. And it's like, that's weird, but that's Brothers Grimm. And there's stuff there. There's stuff there to have fun with.
I just wish, more movies were all about fun, not trying to do more than just entertain people. But, I can dream.
Well, I mean, what's funny is that there's messages in those stories, and that is if you take care of a stranger, you might benefit later on. And even if you help a stranger that's bad, they will get the justice will seek them out through natural forces type of thing. And they're broad spectrum messages. They're not targeted with the ideology of some sort of person's dominance over the world. It's just no, do unto others as you would do yourself. Be cautious, but open-minded, general stuff, things that people learn normally, but you have, the allegory through story for it.
Well said. Speaking of said, our friend Caffeinated Wolf, he's out in the chat that says, shout out from Dallas. Miss y'all, script chat. I guess Jeff is pretty awesome too. Can't wait to see you next week. Can't wait to see you too, man. We're looking forward to hearing your thoughts about all this and a whole lot more.
Absolutely.
So let's move on from Zelda, unless there's anything else you'd like to add. I think I've said a lot.
I'm more curious as who they're going to get as the composer for the soundtrack, because
oh man, now you got me.
Zelda music.
I didn't even think about that.
Gotta have some good Legend of Zelda music, man.
Would it be crazy to just hire Koji Kondo to do it? I mean, he scored all these games. Why not just what's going to be the difference for a movie? I'm sure the name recognizability is what they're worried about, but Zelda has so many unique themes, you got to have them in there.
Yeah.
The Mario movie did it, right?
It did, and I think if they want to use him, all he has to do is compose to the beats in the story, which shouldn't be too difficult because most composers, especially professional ones, know how to do that because they compose to the cinematics in video games, especially in the last 15 years or so. So it's just doing that, but on a more consistent form because you don't have the pauses of gameplay in between to worry about. Because I mean, the gameplay stuff is just a general loop. But when you get into the cinematics, it's all like, okay, this dramatic point is going to happen here, so we want to make sure the music coincides with that dramatic point. And if he can do it, and I think he can, it'd be a good choice. And if they can come up with a couple of new original themes for it too, that's all the better because you can then monetize that in a soundtrack.
Oh yeah, I listened to the Mario soundtrack not that long ago when I was driving, and I thought it was pretty solid. It captures what the game is trying to do normally, and it sounds like the game come to a new medium. So I really was just happy with how Mario handled stuff. Mario's never been my favorite game, but I've loved it since I was a kid. And I don't know, I just felt like they did it right. So many other things that try to adapt or change it for a different medium just never really get that right. That actually felt like all of Mario put into one film, from classic Mario to Luigi's Mansion to Donkey Kong to Smash Brothers to Mario Kart. Like, they hit all the notes in one movie. Now, I know it's because it's animated and you can do a lot more in that kind of a medium with that type of a world, but hopefully they try the same route with Zelda.
I'm hoping that too. It'd be nice.
Yeah, man. Now I'm thinking about the music. I mean, the music's so important. Like, every Zelda game has great music. You name it. Name it, folks in the chat. Name a Zelda game with bad music. Even the Game Boy ones sound great.
Yeah.
I don't want Hans Zimmer though. Do you?
No. Oh, God. No, I would like Christopher Drake. I like him a lot. He doesn't get to do as much. John Kramer's also really good. These are up and well, they're not so much up and coming. They've been doing it for a few decades, but they just they haven't been able to get the accolades I think they deserve.
I'll have to check them out because I love movie music to just put on while I work. It's one of my favorite things to listen to.
So Christopher Drake did a bunch of the DC animated soundtracks when they were good. So he has a 2-disc set for The Dark Knight Returns, which is phenomenal. It's got John Carpenter flavor to it, but it's still very, very in line with Batman. He also did a Green Lantern theme, which is really cool. And he said this on a podcast, and he also tweeted me at it because I follow him on Twitter, and I do every once in a while I will comment on his post. And one of the things he likes to do with his music is the old Dick Donner, John Williams approach, which is if he can find a way to get something of the character's brand into the theme, he will. So in this Green Lantern theme, it works on the same beat structure as the syllables of the oath. So in Brightest Day and Blackest Night, like, he's got those beats in there. So you can actually put the words to those beats in the Green Lantern theme that he did. And it's brilliant.
I always enjoy, like, anytime there's a Superman theme, to see if you can actually sing the word Superman along with the music, because you can on the old Williams one. You can with the cartoon one from 1996. I'm not really as well versed on other Superman shows or Superman properties, but with those two, like, you could even do it with the old cereal from Fleischer back in the 1940s. Yep. Superman. You can just do that. So I always think that's a cool extra thing.
You can do that with Lois and Clark Superman because they've got Superman and blah blah. And then even with the Superboy series, it's just got that two pulse, the 3-beat structure, like Superboy, and then goes into like late 80s, synth after that, which doesn't work out well.
It was the time.
Yeah, you can't do that with any of the Hans Zimmer stuff for Man of Steel, unfortunately, because it's very slow and docile. And it's funny, they didn't have to do that because Warner Brothers owns that theme. And I know Zack Snyder publicly said he couldn't use it. I'm like, yeah, you're lying, because number one, that theme was used in Superman Returns without any issues. And number two, when Joss Whedon got to direct Justice League, he put it in there without any problems. And that's in your field of, doing Superman, buddy. Like, don't try and hoodwink fans of the character. Warner Brothers has a huge music library, and a lot of the songs they have, they don't like to get rid of. But oddly enough, REM has the I Am Superman song that somehow they didn't retain the contract rights for that at all. And so it went over to another label when REM signed with someone else. And it's like, you idiots, like, you actually used that in a couple of your Superman shows. Now you can't, when you have to send it out for, on Blu-ray or on streaming or something, you can't use that song anymore because you no longer own the rights to it.
Dude, I might sound basic, but I would, if I was making a Superman anything, we'd be using the John Williams theme. Like, There's nothing better. Nothing.
Get John Ottman to compose it, because he did. Listen, Superman Returns, not the best movie, but it has a great soundtrack.
It does.
Like, he managed to repurpose the Smallville theme and the Jonathan Kent theme into something that feels more like proto Superman, and it's like, wow, that is really impressive.
My favorite part of that movie, I know it's silly, is when the movie starts and they do the "As Time Goes By" from the Warner Brothers logo, and it cuts into the Superman theme. I was like, dude, that's cool. Yeah.
That is brilliant. Yeah, because it goes right into the horn, right? And you're like, why don't you do that? Because that's you could do that with the Batman theme too.
Oh, dude. I feel like Hollywood looks at it like, well, the movie didn't really perform well. We need to separate ourselves in every way from the whatever. It's like, is that thing that people didn't like, or did they not like the story, or the fact that Superman was a absentee father, or the fact that he didn't really do as much action-oriented stuff as they might have wanted? Like, there's a million different things to look at, but using that theme song and that music was never a bad decision. And I wouldn't be upset if, the Batman is what it is. It's a fine movie. I don't really go back to watch it very often, if at all. But the music's fine. That da 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 da, that like 3 or 4 notes that they just play over and over again.
Yeah,
but I would be much more invested if it was the Danny Elfman Batman, the high adventure, saving the day type of theme.
Dude, I think if you listen to Christopher Drake's the Dark Knight Returns soundtrack, you'd be really jazzed up.
I'll listen to it because I own that on Blu-ray, the double version of the film where it's all on one disc.
Yep.
That is still probably my favorite DC animated feature. I don't buy those normally, but I bought that one.
It's really good. I mean, I will say this, the scene on top of the roof of the television station where Batman is yanking, or right before that, sorry, where Batman is yanking Two-Face's thugs and he's using the smoke and stuff. I'm like, that is really well framed. And it's paced out beautifully because it's Batman attacking from the mist, and it's like you don't get stuff like that in live action, and it could be shot in live action easily. And it's like, why do we have to wait for this in a cartoon version of it? A sophisticated cartoon, mind you. It's like they could have done that. And then you look at the Dark Knight trilogy from Nolan, and he gets kind of close to that. He does it more in the shadow aspect of it. And then you get to Matt Reeves' The Batman, which personally I think is probably one of the worst written Batman films ever. Not worst shot or anything else, just worst written. So yes, I think Batman and Robin is a better written film, even though I despise Akiva Goldsman. But I at least understood why the villains want and are doing what they're doing. I don't get what the Riddler's master plan is. And I can't bridge the stuff he's doing to the flooding of Gotham and not see it as convoluted and BS. But the cinematography is pretty cool in that movie, and the Gotham City set design is fantastic. But it's like, you didn't do anything interesting. You had your introduction to Batman is him walking from the shadows into a lit subway at night. Walking. Like, really? Batman's a ninja. You should be never seeing him walk. He should be appearing and disappearing or moving really fast. And there's rules to these characters, unwritten in some regards, but you just know it's like, well, that doesn't seem authentic to this type of character.
But it's edgy and dark, and everybody's gonna love it.
But that's what Warner Brothers has been doing that with Batman since 1989. I mean, the only time they went off course is with Batman and Forever and Batman and Robin. And then they're like, well, we're not doing that part again. It's like, okay, fine. But then it's like, well, we got to make it more dark, more edgy. It's literally that, Kathleen Cartman meme, it's a superhero at Warner Brothers. Make it dark, make it edgy, make it rated R. It's like, but it's Superman. Make it rated R. It's like,
make it break his neck. It's like, oh God, what are we doing here?
Yeah. So,
somebody in the chat was joking about having Zack Snyder direct the Zelda movie. I think I would rather have my toenails ripped off than have Zack Snyder make that film.
I don't think Zack Snyder's going to be getting many opportunities outside of Netflix for the remainder of his career.
Now, I'm always going to wish people the best because people are people, and I don't take pleasure in watching anyone fail, but I just can't watch his movies. Like, he ruined comic book movies for a lot of people, me being one of them. His brand was shit.
I would like him to leave directing and go to cinematography and stay there. I think he would be a fantastic cinematographer with a great director. Because
I don't disagree.
Because I think that's where his strengths lie. And I'd rather see him succeed there because he can hold the best of them, like even like up against Pfister, who he's a really good cinematographer and he's getting into directing as well. And I think he needs to go back to cinematography also. But I think that's where he should go. He's got a good eye for framing and getting in shots. And the other part too is that with him as a cinematographer, if he's like, hey, we should do this in slow-mo, the director would be like, tell him no, especially if it's not required. And that way you don't actually have to have a movie that is 60% slow-mo.
Dude, I really hate that early 2000s slow-mo that was in so many movies. It was just over the top. Like the movie that ruined the most for me was that Die Another Day. Because I go back to watch that and I'm just like, why? Yeah, the story's dumb. Yeah, there's a lot of bad shit. But it's like the slow motion is what takes me out of it. Like that era of just overused slow-mo and action movies. It's something I'm really grateful that we're out of because it was never cool. Even back then, I kind of rolled my eyes like, why is this slow? It's not that intense.
It's them trying to ape the success of The Matrix, man. They used slow-mo and they used it well. One of the things that The Matrix did, which made sense for The Matrix, but didn't make sense in other movies, is, oh, yeah, we're going to have a helicopter smash into a building and it's going to have this cool ripple effect. All the glass is going to bend and whatever. And it's like, well, glass doesn't do that in reality. I know I've seen it. And same with metal. But then you get all these other things where, oh, yeah, we're going to have this crazy thing. A car is going to hit another car, and then we're going to see this cool buckle and ripple effect. And it's like, listen, I've seen professional car crashes and stuff, and I've seen them shot in super slow-mo. Metal doesn't behave that way ever, at all. It doesn't. And Mythbusters, I think, even tried to discredit that, but I don't know if that episode aired or not. But I mean, that was a trope for a while. You'll see, oh yeah, heck, they did it. Just speaking of Superman Returns, they did in Superman Returns. Superman catches that plane. He stops in the field, and then all the exterior metal plates on it ripple through. And it's like, dude, if it could do that, all those panels would be shot right off the skeletal structure of the fuselage. It'd just buckle off because it doesn't work that way. Metal does have some flexibility to it, but there's a tolerance, and it would most likely just bend off the frame as opposed to actually warping a metal, or it would warp and stay that way, and it wouldn't bend back without excessive force.
I keep forgetting how, while The Matrix is the most influential movie in terms of like visuals and storytelling of the 90s, like it really created a lot of bad movies. Like it was great for it, but I don't want to say it ruined filmmaking because that's hyperbolic and wrong. But now I'm thinking back to all the influences it had. Like even X-Men were going to be in all black leather. Like everybody wore black leather to try to ape The Matrix. And it looked awesome in The Matrix, but you know, everything else has got to have some color to it. I'm really glad we're out of that post-Matrix era because it really kind of sucked. Everything, there was like a sameness to everything. Like we complain now about the Arrested Development. There was a sameness to visuals across the board, and it wasn't exciting to watch. Like even though the MCU's fallen by the wayside, there was a point in time where it was exciting to watch those movies because there was color. You would actually have a superhero in a traditional style costume. They weren't trying to put him in dark leather like X-Men or Daredevil. No, they were cool to, wear bright colored suits and jump around and do shit. Everything had
heck,
to be a certain style back then.
Scarlett Johansson's costume in her Shield uniform was not a leather costume. It was actually more like an off silk polyester spandex thing where she's fighting in that hallway in Iron Man 2. She's not wearing leather. She's wearing something that is tight and form fitting
I didn't
and breathe.
notice what it was made out of, dude. It just looked good.
It did wonders. Yes. Yeah. I mean,
I was always a
that's
Scarlett
the thing.
Johansson fan.
I mean, she's got one heck of a sultry voice. She would be smart to get into voice acting soon because she's sadly aging out of Hollywood, even though I think she's got many, many years in her as well. But she's got such a unique voice that she could go very far with the right cartoon show, essentially.
That'd be cool because her voice is one of the reasons I like her so much. So
yeah,
I'm pretty much game for most Scarlett Johansson things. I mean, I was a lot more when I was younger. I mean, I even sat through the Nanny Diaries when I was in college, but I don't have time for that bullshit anymore. When you're young and can waste hours watching anything because Scarlett Johansson looks good, you're like, all right, whatever. Now I have to pick and choose. But did you ever see the one that she was in with Wes Anderson that came out over the summer? Asteroid City.
Asteroid City. Yeah, I thought Asteroid City was a nice kooky film. I like the fact that it was a play and a movie mixed into one. Yes, I know. Yes, she's naked in it for like a half frame. Listen, Scarlett Johansson, a very beautiful, very sexy woman. But a lot of the curves that we see in those Avengers films are mostly the costume and the stunt lady than it is Scarlett. But still, I would not say no to her if she wanted to hang out.
Oh, no. You might father another Hollywood child. Who knows?
Well, I know Colin Yost isn't the father of any of her kids right now, even though they've been married for 3 years.
How old are her kids?
I think she has one that's a year and a half old and another one that's 4.
Yeah, I couldn't be with somebody that's like, yeah, I need to have a kid with this never mind. We're not going to get it. I'm like, that's the dumb side of fame in Hollywood. It's like, I don't know. I'm old school.
No, Scarlett Johansson is notorious for going through men like that are going out of style. I only think she's sticking with Colin Yost because number one, he's a writer at SNL, so and he's a dork, so he's not going to cheat on her. But she just needs someone that's a little stable enough for her family while she's going off to do her own workings and things of that nature. But I have high doubts that the son, quote unquote, that they had together is not really his.
Yeah, dude, grow a backbone and get out. Scarlett Johansson may be hot, but don't do that to yourself. Anyway, yeah, I digress. So you brought up Scarlett Johansson, who was the star as Black Widow in a lot of films in the MCU. And on Thursday night, we have another Marvel film coming out that no one is excited for, The Marvels. Now, folks, we've lived through a Marvel flop. We've lived through Marvel films that don't really hit the mark. But it looks like this is going to be the biggest disappointment in the MCU's, what has it been, 15-year run?
15-year run, and it's at movie 33.
33 movies. If you would have told me this back from the day, I'd be like, man, bring them on. I'll watch 100 Marvel movies. I'm at my limit now. It's like, this is a press pass, a special free screening type of situation. So that's why you're going to get a review on Thursday night from WCBS, folks. But the word on the street is not positive for this movie. Projections have dropped constantly from the original film that opened to 153.4 million, I believe. And now this film is guessing to open under 70, which puts it in Black Adam and Flash territory. And if I'm not mistaken, the Flash was one of the biggest flops in Warner Brothers in terms of like cost to return.
Expense to return. Yeah, it's actually overshadows Superman Returns, which Superman Returns absorbed the cost of all the attempts of making a Superman 5 in the 90s, in that entire decade.
Oh shit!
Well.
I didn't realize that's how that went down. That's kind of like how the WCW went under, because Turner blended a lot of loss under the wrestling umbrella, and so then the executives were like, wrestling makes no money, and they shit canned it essentially.
Even though they were actually kind of slowly paying off that debt, if memory serves, on the finances there. With The Flash, that movie was announced in 2015. And it went through 4 different directors and 8 different writers, and it was reshot supposedly 2 times. And a lot of this footage that you saw in the final version of The Flash was from another director before Muschietti came in. However, you'll never probably hear any actual stuff to verify that, at least not for another few more years until a tell-all book comes out. For Superman Returns, yes, Christopher Reeve was agreed to do a Superman 5 in the early 90s, and then unfortunately he suffered his accident, became paralyzed. And then it changed into Superman Lives by Kevin Smith and so forth. John Peters kept on moving it around. Then Tim Burton got involved and with Nick Cage. And then it was then morphed into Batman v Superman with Wolfgang Peterson. And then it morphed into another thing. J.J. Abrams got his hands on it with Superman Flyby for a bit. And then it eventually landed into Bryan Singer's hands. And all that money that Warner Brothers spent was still part of the Superman LLC that was founded back in 91, I think, for Superman Returns. And all those and a new LLC was done for Superman Returns, and they bought the debt of the previous stuff so that whatever money Superman Returns made would go to pay off that debt, along with the pre-sales and everything else. And at the end of the day, even though Superman Returns did moderately well, all things considered, it did not make the money that Warner Brothers needed to. And so even though they were working on a sequel, they weren't in any rush until the Siegel family said, hey, the rights for Superman film rights are coming up and we want to renegotiate. And then that's when Warner Brothers hit the panic button and said, we got to make a movie now or else we lose the rights. And that's how we got Man of Steel. That's behind the scenes stuff there. Same thing as happening happened with The Flash to a degree. And now, we're looking at a big bomb. The Marvels, this one here, and I've learned this from a couple of different sources, one of which actually is a post-effects compositor for the film. I won't say which one, so he can be safe. But it was reshot just before the SAG strike. And they had 2 test screenings, and the reshot version performed worse than the initial test screening.
Oh, really?
Yes. So Marvel has a threshold line, which is that if it doesn't pass this threshold, we don't release it. And their threshold line is 70 out of 100. And what I've heard from these different sources who are not connected, which is actually really hysterical, is that the first version of the Marvels performed at 30 out of 100, which warranted the reshoots and the re-edit. And the second version performed at 28 out of 100. So
how? Okay, 28%. That's the shittiest grade you can get in school. Like,
yeah,
I don't know what actually
that's almost a Z grade. If F is the fail at 50,
yeah. It's like you didn't study for the test. You didn't even show up for the test. It's like, hell, some tests you get points for putting your name on it. It's like all Marvel did. We put our name on it, and that's why people gave it that score. 28 out of 100. Like, folks in the chat, are you surprised? I know everyone's still, they feel this certain way about Brie Larson in the first Captain Marvel movie, but I guess I shouldn't be surprised. Let's take it back to that Variety article, how they wanted to make a Blade film full of life lessons and make Blade relegated to the back seat. Now, I don't really care how far back they put Captain Marvel in the back seat, but you really have to screw up if you make a movie that's that level of, reception.
It's basically saying that it's an unreleasable film. And because they committed to this date and Disney will not push it back, and they don't want to spend more money because they're essentially throwing good money after bad. In this case, they have to release it. And I would not be surprised if they were betting on Dune not moving so that they could say, well, the Marvels did good, but couldn't perform Dune, which had huge, it's Dune. It's got as much history behind it as the Marvel comics does. And it has its own hardcore fan. Like, they were totally going to try and figure out a way to just blame this on Dune and not the fact that they made a crappy movie and got stuck with it. But it's just the way it is. Now, what's kind of surprising is that you never know. The test audiences that reported on it, maybe they have terrible taste. Maybe it could be good. I'm not holding my breath because the pattern that we've seen of Marvel over the last few years has suggested it's not going to be the case. And, sadly, Disney does not have the Batgirl opportunity to write this off because this was intended as a studio release film, which means that it was, as I mentioned on the last time I was on here, it's pre-sold to various territories and markets throughout the world. That money goes towards the budget. And if they cash it, if they cancel a film, they got to pay that money back, which means that they don't get the tax write-off that Batgirl got, because Batgirl was internal. It was only going to be on HBO Max. They didn't have those deals. So yeah, they're stuck with this dud. On top of that, Nia DaCosta, the director, was not overseeing post-production and edits because she left to go work on her own project, which is weird, but because normal directors stick with the movie from concept to completion. Like, they don't forget about the film until they finish the DVD commentary type of deal. And she's nowhere to be found. So this is all being made by Kevin Feige and co. And it's a little bittersweet, because in the earlier days when I was streaming on YouTube, I was telling people, like, listen, you can love Kevin Feige all you want, but he's got a whole team behind him that's making this work. And as the years progressed, we saw members of those teams leave and move on to other things. And the quality also vanished as well. And it's like, you can't put all your eggs in one basket as much as we like to, as much as we think one person can solve every problem. They can't. You have to have a good team and a good leader and good leadership in that team. And I think Kevin Feige had some decent leadership at the time when he had a good team around him. And as his power grew and other people found it harder to say no to him or provide him with alternatives, we are now reaping the results of that. And I'm surprised that this is going to be the shortest Marvel movie, because I think Ant-Man and the first Doctor Strange were just a little bit over 90 minutes. Because again, these movies have 10 to 15 minutes of end credits, so that doesn't count. But it's kind of crazy to see that, yeah, they're really nothing says concern about your film when you deliberately try to cut it down to the bare minimum it needs to qualify as a feature film for a Marvel movie, which has, for the last 10 years out of the 15, basically have been always coming up to the wire on the 2-hour runtime.
I forgot about the credits and the length. Like, I'm morbidly curious to just how dumb this movie can be. I mean, I want to be objective. I want to go in as we are world class after all. So I want to be, professional about this stuff. But I'll treat it like I treated the first Captain Marvel. We gave the film the score we gave it based on the film we saw. And that score happened to be a 5 out of 10. That was one of the lowest at the time films in the MCU. It has since been topped in terms of lower quality films like Thor: Love and Thunder and The Eternals. But, going in this week, I don't expect to see a lot of people in theaters. I don't expect to see many people talking about this movie. It's just like the new trailer that dropped is very desperate. It's trying to promote this film as an Avengers spinoff and a follow-up, more so than a fun romp with, Marvel and the Disney Plus shows and all this and crossing over. And I don't even need to go on about girl power and all this crap. It just looks dumb, independent of that kind of stuff. The production looks cheaper. It doesn't really look like they put as much money into these movies anymore. But somehow they cost just as much. Like, I think the costuming has fallen off the side of that mountain that we talked about earlier, where the suits look cheaper, the effects look cheaper, like everything. And we already saw last year, or was it this year with the Victoria Alonso stuff? Was that early this year?
Yes. She was terminated shortly after Ant-Man. The public excuse is that she broke her contract and started spending her time on a personal independent production called something like Argentina
1985, right?
Yes. The scuttlebutt in town is that not only did she didn't allocate resources appropriately at Marvel. The very thing I suspected she was doing, which was making movies in post-production and ordering reshoots to fit ideology, ended up being softly confirmed from the people I know in that area. Because that's what happens when you create a department in a studio of a producer who is in charge of post-production. You don't need a producer in charge of post-production. Your actual producer in charge of production is overseeing that as well. So you now have a producer in charge of production and then a producer in charge of post-production. And then post-production, you get the final say on what's going to be the output of your film. So if you don't like what the producer of production did, guess what? You've got their boss essentially. You can now say, well, this movie doesn't fit the tone or the messaging or what we need it to, so we're going to order reshoots so that we can get that in there. And that's kind of what she did. And she had full support over a lot of people at Marvel and at Disney. And I think this was a made up position for a couple of reasons, because Marvel never had this position before. They promoted her, I think, not just to reward her for her, being at Marvel Studios from day one, and also to keep her around, but also as kind of a emergency break glass to, and to grab this escape rope type of thing where they could fit any of their mistakes that they would happen to make on her. Because you don't make up a position that's completely redundant unless you're planning to get rid of them. And they finally did. And it happened as I suspected it would, because it's just really weird that you get this thing promoted. It's like, well, you keep her around or you set her up to fail. And it looks like they set her up to fail, because here's the other part too. That position has been empty since she left. If it was a real important position, it would have been filled immediately. No one stepped into that role.
Do you think we're over the at least at Disney, because we always talk about it here on the show, like it's not all these other studios that are putting this crap in there. Do you think Disney's finally going to be over some of the life lessons, in quotation stuff that they try to force into these movies after the matter of fact, or after the films are shot? Or do you think that's just going to get more and more intense?
Disney is going to be kicking and screaming as the rest of the industry is kind of pulling movies away from that. Like, listen, every story has some sort of moral to it in some regards. It's not the driving force. It's a byproduct of what's being said. And what's happened over at Disney is that they've inverted that. They're making that the driving force. And they're presenting it as a driving force. And people don't like that. People don't like being preached to at the same time while they're being told that they're evil. That's why there's certain congregations and churches that not a lot of people show up to, because their pastor is saying, you're all sinners, and then sticks on that for a while. And then at the very end, they say, but you could be better. It's the ones where they go back. It's like, yes, we're all sinners, but this is how you can be better now. And how we can, those types of things, which I've been able to witness growing up here and there. And yeah, you can't frame a story that way, because every person that's writing or directing or acting is trying to put a little bit of themselves in their work, not just for authenticity, but a little bit of immortality to a degree, where they can say, yes, I'm going to be preserved forever on film in this movie, in this story, and people are going to see my face. And if I do a good job, they won't recognize who I really am and my flaws, but they'll recognize maybe something in the character I'm portraying within themselves that they can identify, that they can correct or embrace or aspire to, or something of that nature. Like, that's kind of the overall motivation that comes from performing and telling a story. That's been lost from Disney. In fact, they've rarely ever had it in the history of their films anyways. I mean, Disney always advertises that they're big on family values, but even if you look at the stuff in their heyday, it's like, is that really family values? Like, Fox Robin Hood was not very family value-ish. It's kind of had a little bit of lewdness to it. Little Mermaid, is it really family values for Little Mermaid Ariel, a cartoon, for her to have killed a couple of clam in order to wear it as a bra? And is Poseidon really a family value guy when, you never see his mother, and he's got weird kids and he's a king and abusive, and like there's things there that stretch credulity when it comes to whether they were really family value driven. Exercise some scrutiny on that. But then there's other stuff that they did. Like, I would say their Honey, I Shrunk the Kids film. It's a good family film.
Mm-hmm.
It does play around with, the joke of French class, where how do you know how to, save her from drowning? It's like French class. It's like, well, okay, that goes over the head of a bunch of kids, but adults know what that is. And like, that's might be a little funny and for some adults and a little inappropriate for others. But regardless, that's the case there. They advertise that as a brand, and whether it's real or not, that's what they advertise for, and that's what people expect. And now, even though they still try to advertise it, they haven't even made any effort to try and create an illusion of that in their content, especially as of late. So it's crazy. And here's something that's also kind of interesting. Teyonah Parris, who plays Monica Rambeau,
Mhm.
she was pregnant during the reshoots. So keep your eye out for any scenes where you don't see any full shots of her.
Oh, I did hear about her having or being pregnant or having a baby at some point, but I didn't realize it was during the reshoots of this film.
Yeah, well, she got pregnant. I think she's like 4 months pregnant when the SAG strike started. So they already reshot before the SAG strike began, or yeah, already reshot and finished it. And I think she publicly announced her pregnancy just like 2 months ago.
Oh, okay.
So
This
I
year's
hope
gone by fast.
it really has. But I mean, they had to deal with that. They're like, oh wow, you have it. I mean, it's not. It's the kind of like how Gal Gadot was pregnant during some parts of Justice League, and you can tell that she was pregnant because they no, not sorry, some parts of Wonder Woman. Sorry, not Justice League. You can tell she was pregnant because in the shots where she has that glow, and you're like, oh, that's her early pregnancy glow, and you're like, yeah, the camera picked up on it. Um, uh, when you work in this industry long enough, you actually pick it up. What was really funny is when I think it was the last season of Supergirl. Um, I saw the pilot. I saw the first episode of that with some friends, and the first shot that we got of Melissa Benoist, I was like, "Oh man, she's pregnant," and they all looked at me. It's like, "How the hell can you tell? It's a wide shot." I'm like, "Well, she's got something's odd going on with her face. That's not right." And then midway through that season, yeah, it's publicly announced that yep, she's expecting her first child with her husband. And then you could tell from the cinematography from the episodes as they progressed, especially because my friend was a diehard Supergirl fan at the time of watching it. He's like, yeah, they're not showing any shots of her below the chest, and all the wide shots are from behind or something else. It's like, yeah, because she's got a baby bump. Um, and it's kind of funny, but it's hard to shoot around that. It's really hard because you always have to put them behind objects. So I'm curious of how many shots are going to be of Monica Rambeau on in a wide shot or something, or in a medium close where someone is conveniently in front of her while they're talking to hide her baby bump, or if they probably digitally erased it somehow. That's weird, but I can see them doing it.
Do you think this film is going to have the same online backlash with the first Captain Marvel, or do you think people just don't care enough?
I wouldn't. I expect it to be less obnoxious in the pedantic way that the first Captain Marvel was. I also have to remind people out there the scene that a lot of people reference where she's hurting the biker. That's a deleted scene. That's not in the cut of the film. She just ignores him and goes into the shop and then steals his bike and the clothes in the fake Nine Inch Nails t-shirt. So yeah, I mean, I think it's going to have issues, and I think it's going to be convoluted. Um, the actress who plays Miss Marvel, she's okay. This is the only role she's ever had. I feel sorry for her that this is it, and it's in this film because that's going to put a barrier in her ability to act in other things. Because they're going to look at her and be like, "Oh yeah, you're in a Disney Marvel film, but you're in the worst performing Disney Marvel film. So why are we going to invest in you for our thing?" Especially if it's going to be other studio films. On the independent side of films, she could probably get a lot of work, and that'd probably be better for her. But I'm worried about her getting a whole lot of scrutiny and hate because she is a Marvel fangirl, more so on the comic side of things, and I think that this is not really the best introduction to her, and because she is a child actress, she's more vulnerable than the veterans that we see on screen here.
Yeah, I have never watched Miss Marvel. I have no interest in the show. I don't really have interest in a lot of the Disney Plus series. Like, for as much as I enjoyed Loki season 1, I haven't even touched season 2. Let me rephrase that. I started to put on episode 1, and I went, do I really want to watch this? So I put on a Long Halloween, the Warner Brothers animated version over on HBO or Max, excuse me.
Ooh.
So I couldn't even commit. Here's the thing. I really like the new Warner Brothers art style that's been popping up in a lot of their animated features. So while the story is fine, I mean, I read the comic like decades ago. It's
Comic is
not
way
my favorite
better. I just
Batman.
call it like the Godfather Batman because
Yeah,
it's what it is.
to me, it's just it's proto Dark Knight. It's so
Mhm.
much of the Dark Knight is pulled directly from that book, and that's cool. I'm not the world's biggest Tim Sale fan as an artist. I don't dislike his work, but I tend to like a little more realism in my stuff. And so
Mhm.
this cartoon really, I don't know,
It was disciplined in a different way. Yeah.
and I dug that, but I haven't finished it yet, so I can't act like I thought it was the greatest thing ever.
It was painful for me to watch. Jensen Ackles cannot voice act. CW actor.
I don't
Good
like him
looking
as
guy,
Batman.
has one of the most beautiful wives in the industry, who has retired to be a family lady and a mother. But yeah, he's I don't know, he has a fan base, but man, like he has not grown as an actor at all. He's just a good looking guy.
It always makes me laugh when people are like, "You should play Batman in live action." I'm like, "Look, Dean Winchester is cool. He is a cool character, and I like him in that." But it's the same Sam family like every episode, and it is what it is.
Mhm.
But that's how little I can be, or how interested I am in the MCU right now, or the fact that I'm watching like something that's years old. Like literally anything is more exciting than watching Loki. After
Nothing happens.
Secret Invasion, it was terrible. Nothing
Secret
happens.
Invasion was absolutely trash. Nothing happens in Loki, like at all. I've been kind of watching it when I work out in the mornings, and nothing happens. Like it's complete reset to like they're trying to do like a Dirk Gently type of thing here. Every step that they take forward gets immediately reverted back to the beginning again. They tell you what's at stake, but they don't make you understand why it's important, because it's not. So it's really just wasting everyone's time. And it's like, okay, you have no idea what you're doing with this. As I've said before, over YouTube and even on Twitter and stuff, Kang is a time traveler from like 1,000 years into the future, if not more. Yes, he's like how we would be with our with store bought weapons from Walmart and a smartphone. If we went back to the caveman days, we would dominate that planet immediately. Kang should be able to do that here, but they don't do that here. They actually have no idea what they're. I don't think there's a single person at Marvel right now that understands who Kang is, what potential threat he can provide, and how that could actually have been used to raise stakes for the next chapter in Marvel. And he's kind of a lame character in the comics and wasn't used too much because they realized he's kind of way more powerful than the Avengers are, and they can only get away with him so many times. But you're talking about a guy who, even if he loses, he has time travel at his disposal, so he can go back in time to just before when he lost and fix it and continue to be victorious. And so it really puts the Avengers at a disadvantage because they essentially can't ever break the loop of him constantly winning every skirmish that they encounter, because he's as long as he survives, he can see it and go back and fix it. And that's a very dangerous mechanic to have for your characters to face off against. It's one that's going to be very, very fun if you know how to write it. And then,
I thought the best adaptation of Kang the Conqueror came from Avengers: Earth's Mightiest Heroes.
yeah,
That I really dug that cartoon. I've been I haven't kept that secret at all, but I just really loved how they did that and how they defeated him. I wish that contracts and not budgets, but contracts and salaries weren't the issue with some of these choices. Because man, if you could have kept the MCU status quo like you did that cartoon, you had another decade of people sticking around and people getting
yep.
excited for these things.
Well, they burn through their stuff real fast because I was going through the Marvel archives, just trying to look at like the most pivotal stories that they have out there that's not Fantastic Four, X-Men, or Spider-Man. And there's a handful. I mean, there's not really a whole lot that really hit hard, like the Infinity Gauntlet stuff. And they did a lot of them between 89 and 96. That's kind of like their big hurrah. But then, Secret Wars was something, but that was kind of like pulled out of the universe. Iron Man had Demon in a Bottle, which was a good one, and they tried that for Iron Man 2, but Disney didn't want to do it because it's, again, against their family brand. It's they had, Secret Invasion was more recent one, which could have been done, but the Skrull Kree War, that's a great storyline that could have been a good trilogy and across an Iron Man, Captain America, and Avengers film or Thor film, if you wanted to go that route. Like, they kind of burned through a lot of their stories, the stories that they have access to, more so than they expected. Because again, you don't want to do the Clone Saga because that sucked. You don't want to do Age of Apocalypse because that's X-Men. Maybe you can get away with the Evolutionary War from '88. And then there's the Korvac saga. Those are some of the more pivotal ones before you actually start getting towards the end of the 20th century. But because, again, Marvel leaned into the titles that did the best, which was your X-Men, your Fantastic Four, your Spider-Man. Like Iron Man, had its moments here and there. Thor, it's had its moments here and there. Captain America has moments, and same with Avengers. But those other titles, the ones that Marvel didn't have access to, that's where a lot of the really good content came from. So yeah, like they burned through Civil War, Age of Ultron, and Infinity Gauntlet pretty quickly in those first 18 movies, or first 20 odd movies, which is unfortunate. And now it's like, well, what do you got? Well, we're at a dry well now. We're doing with Kang and time variance and multiverse. It's like, man, you're really hitting all the hits of Marvel, in its 60 plus years of existence really quickly right now. You're burning out fast. Instead of having fun, or maybe trying to find some of the lesser known stories to play around with. Because I think Ultron would have been great, but he should have been the next big bad, but they kind of wasted him, in my opinion.
Yeah, quickly.
Yeah, they made him disposable when he's not. He's a very formidable villain.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I felt like he is, at the build up to the film, he felt like he was going to be a big staple and a big threat. And by the end of the movie, as you know, he was defeated. And is that even mentioned? Like, I'm sure in passing they're like, yeah, robot invasion, but it didn't even feel like as great of a threat as, say, Loki and the Chitauri army, or Thanos and his army. I feel like Avengers: Age of Ultron is kind of like, I kind of just skip over it in my mind too. I enjoy that all the Avengers are there; they're not dying off. You get to see them all as a team, not fractured. But they don't have the best. It's not like The Empire Strikes Back that has this. The second film has this great twist or whatever to keep you hooked. It kind of just feels inconsequential to the greater Marvel landscape. Like, outside of the twins showing up, what else is there in that movie that really changes everything?
All it does is set up an idea that's brought in through the Civil War, Captain America Civil War, which you didn't even have to use the whole movie to set up that idea. Like, the very accident that happens at the start of the Civil War, Captain America Civil War, with Wanda blowing up parts of those floors of the building by accident, stimulates the whole thing. So you just completely made Age of Ultron and Ultron the character just disposable. And really all it was is like, we just want to get the stone from the wand into Vision, and we want to bring in Vision. It's like, you don't need Vision now. Like, you didn't need Vision, and you haven't done anything with him ever. Like, even in the WandaVision, you didn't do anything with him. So it's like, you bring in this character to have the character, but you don't do anything with him. So what's the point? It's just, it's just sad. It's a big mistake that they made there. Listen, Joss Whedon is a mistake in general. Listen, the best thing he ever wrote was Buffy the Vampire Slayer movie, and the television series, which he wrote on for a bit, was really done by a group of other writers that did all the heavy lifting. And he wrote that as any good executive producer should. But he doesn't really have many hits to his name, and the popularity he has is because of that show, and Angel, and his Firefly concept was pretty strong, but his ego and Fox screwing up and butting heads caused that show to disappear. And even though his fan base, which I think is an awesome fan base, really, really was pushing for Serenity to be the successful film to bring that show back, they learned the hard truth that as loud as they are, their fans are not strong enough, nor do they spend enough to warrant him to continue to have a career. And he got very lucky with Avengers, but he was also shooting fish in a barrel. So long as he didn't screw up those characters, that movie was going to make $1 billion regardless. And he did it.
He did, and no matter where the MCU sits, I still enjoy that film, and I like what it represents. You know, it's an achievement in its own right. I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, it's Disney, it's this, it's that." Look, it was Paramount at the time. It is a Paramount picture. Iron Man 3 is the first Disney one that is credited to them.
Fully distributed Disney thing, because what happened is like Pearl Metal sold the distribution rights to Disney in addition to the rest of the company to Disney. But Paramount was like, well, we've already spent the money, so we get our logo on all these films until our contract ends out. And that's why Paramount has its classic shield before Avengers.
And I remember, I'm a longtime comic fan like you are. I read these things when they were cool, when they were not cool, be at my local store every week, no matter what. And to just finally, hear the hype for all those, 4 years and that buildup, and then finally getting to it, and it was good. And I remember walking out of that theater going, man, things are different. That was awesome. That was maybe my favorite comic book movie. I felt so excited. And that's the movie I've seen the most in theaters. It's the movie I bought day one that it came out on Blu-ray. I used to watch it a lot. And I still think the Battle of New York is one of the best things they ever put to film. It's still exciting. It's got great pacing. It's funny, but it's also serious. And it's a great, like I said, I just really like that movie. I wouldn't change anything about that one. And, Joss Whedon, like you said, he was shooting fish in a barrel. But the thing I wanted to make the point about that is that was like such a big deal for me as a film goer. But to be here now and just not give a damn. I say this all the time, but how do you screw something up like that? I wish they would have just taken, once the Avengers ended, they go, well, our next saga is now the X-Men. Instead of trying to milk a second wave of Avengers or a B-list team of Marvel heroes. Like, I get it. At the time, Captain America and Thor and Iron Man weren't as big of deals. But what a lot of people fail to realize is they were still relevant enough that kids growing up in the 90s, we all knew who these characters were, and we all were exposed to them in some form or fashion, be it their cartoon series that wasn't very good, or their video games, or their toy lines. Like, they were still around. They may have not been Spider-Man and X-Men, or even like, Ghost Rider to that level, because Ghost Rider was a big deal back in the day, or the Punisher. They still had recognizability, and it was such a big deal to see those guys. And like you had talked about them exhausting their great storylines, I believe they've exhausted a good chunk of their characters that I personally will get excited for. Now, of course, we're not talking X-Men yet because that hasn't happened. But I don't know if it ever will be done the way I want to see it, where I look at X-Men as X-Men could be the property that tops the MCU in terms of box office success, because all those characters are so, I don't like to say iconic because it seems like a cop-out, but like the core X-Men team are household names. And all the ancillary side characters, I mean, X-Factor, X-Force, the New Mutants, all of them, if done right, those could be your spin-offs, and they'll have a huge fan base. And even though I don't read a lot of those books or care about a lot of those characters outside of your like core X-Men, there's no reason you can't tell 50, I don't want to say 50, that's hyperbolic, but there's no reason you can't tell 20 stories with the X-Men. You don't have to put them in these story arcs where they have to end. I mean, the X-Men went on hundreds of adventures in the books. You could have Cyclops lead the team for 30 movies or 20 movies or whatever it is. I think Marvel also too has gotten into this business of trying to tell that their stories have a finite amount of time to build hype and to build this and that. But sometimes knowing that the characters are just going to stick around and go on to greater things, it's enough to keep you coming back for more if they're good, like a serial.
It is, but sadly, Fox Studios has done the Phoenix Saga twice.
Oh, and they've never done it well. What's ironic, though, is that before Disney got their whole hands on Marvel,
Marvel had contracts with Universal for Hulk. They were negotiating contracts with Fox for X-Men and Fantastic Four, and they were also ready to open up contracts with Sony for Spider-Man for their MCU, which means that you would have had Fox, Sony, Universal, and Paramount all working together as participants with Marvel Studios to create the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But as soon as Disney purchased that, all those other contracts, all those other talks completely ended. And it wasn't until out of desperation they managed to open up channels with Sony to get Spider-Man permission to use Spider-Man in their MCU. And then also at the expense of like $70+ billion of Fox to get Fantastic Four, X-Men, and any of the other characters they might also happen to have, which I'm not sure what else those would be out of those two. So Disney kind of threw a wrench in their acquisition of everything we could have had, because had it still stuck with Paramount, I would not be surprised if the X-Men, if an X-Men deal was made to occur and also be released instead of what they ended up doing, which was with First Class. Like, because First Class came out, I think, in 2011 or after that. And that was being shopped around and made because the negotiations stopped in 2009 when Disney basically said, yeah, we're going to be buying Marvel now.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that's how that went down like that.
Yeah, I mean, because again, the first two MCU films are Iron Man and the Incredible Hulk. And they did better than expected. Not gangbusters, of course, but better than expected. And it warranted them to keep on making it. And then it was Thor, Captain America, Iron Man 2, then Thor, Captain America. And Iron Man 2 is when Disney kind of got involved. They had already been well underway with Thor and Captain America, but they were working extra long on that because they wanted those to come after Iron Man 2. So Iron Man 2 was rushed, and Disney wasn't paying much attention to Thor and Captain America. So that's why Thor and Captain America, are fairly better than we expected them to be. I really liked Captain America a lot. And everything just kind of slowly got to go off the rails there. But man, it was a heck of a ride. And some of the stuff that they did put out, definitely worth watching again. I'm still a big fan of that first Ant-Man film.
Same.
It's charming. It's got a lot going on with it.
Luis is great.
Yeah. Oh God, Luis is fantastic. I'm like, where is he in the third one? And if I ever get a chance to meet Peyton Reed, I hope to get an answer on that, because that was cool.
It was. They used to be so much fun to go watch, and I might be in the minority here, but I think Phase 1 is still their best phase. Like, Iron Man 2 isn't the best, but I love Iron Man. It's so rewatchable. It might be my favorite. It's up there as tied for one of my favorite ones. Iron Man 2's fine. I like Captain America, like you said. I like Thor 1 because it's a movie about a god learning what it means to be human. I liked the humility aspect. I thought that was when Jane Foster was kind of charming. Thor was cool. I liked Loki's, plot to take over Asgard. That one kind of was a surprise. When people would shit on that on the internet, I was like genuinely shocked. It's like, wow, how do people hate this movie? This one was solid and a lot of fun. I think I saw that twice in theaters. That's how much I enjoyed it.
Me too, actually. And only because the showing we thought we got tickets for beforehand was sold out. And it turns out we got tickets for a way later time. So we needed something to do for 3 hours before our next showing. So we ended up going seeing Thor again. And yeah, Chris Hemsworth knocks it out of the park. Kenneth Branagh directed it, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Did a great job with it. And here's the other part too. Idris Elba plays Heimdall, but they don't. That was the quote unquote race swap, if you will, of the character. But at no point do I recall anything in the trades about how crazy and progressive it is that they did this. It's like, no, Kenneth Branagh's like, I like Idris Elba and I want him to play this role.
Yeah. Can you believe Sanity was around in 2011? It feels like a million years ago that things were different, but I believe that if they did operate like that and didn't look for this self-congratulation, marketing or whatever, a lot of audiences wouldn't care, but they look at it as, annoying Hollywood or this or that, and people they do push back on some of that stuff. It's like, stop trying to pat yourselves on the back, guys. We get it. You're doing stuff that's different. Okay, fine. But I think more people would be open-minded to just give these things a shot if Hollywood wouldn't go, look how great we are. And they're their own worst
It
enemy.
is. And you're talking about that's let's see, when Thor came out, that was 4 years into the social justice beginnings of it. And I know this because I remember I was talking to an actor friend of mine who got out of the business a while ago, but he was talking about how when he was acting on like background and day player stuff in 2006, 7, 8, 9, and so forth, a lot of the scenes that he was in, one of the main characters would be talking about how, like, oh yeah, I'm going to college for social justice. It's like, well, yeah, I remember you in that episode or that thing on that show. It's like, yeah, that was like 2008. It's like, yeah, they were talking about it very subtly back then. And now it's, household name, social justice and warriors and all those things. It's crazy how much it took over and dominated in a little bit over a decade.
Yeah. Sad, funny, all of those things rolled into one, actually. But it, like I said, I think Hollywood contributes a lot to their own problems.
Yep.
And that's why a lot of people, especially in our audiences, they're just like, screw them, watch it burn. I don't care, this, that, and the other. And that's fine. The audience can have their own opinions and takes on everything. I believe a lot of those things would be avoided, though, Hollywood, if you didn't look for a pat on the back. Just do what you think is good, or do what you're gonna do, and don't look for us to, say thank you. Make us entertained. That's all we expect out of Hollywood. I don't really look to the MCU for life lessons. I don't look to, some comic books, you learn a lot about humanity and it makes you think about stuff. And I understand that that's part of the medium and that's what's great. I mean, even at the end of the day, some of the best pieces of entertainment are little morality tales. The Twilight Zone morality tales. My favorite comic books are EC comic books. Very strong morality in those books about what's right and wrong. But you don't feel like you're, I don't know, scolded. You don't feel like you're made to feel like an asshole if you disagree or if you're not as invested in the societal message as you are the gore or the lascivious nature of the characters in regards to EC books. But that's what, like, as an audience member, I feel like I'm only supposed to care or talk about these things, and the people on Twitter push for that as well. And personally, I don't look to the people for Twitter as a real audience. They're an audience that wants to be part of a conversation or something that's popular. And when when the thing becomes less popular, the people on Twitter jump to whatever is popular, be it Taylor Swift or the video game or this or that, the other thing. And you're left with the remnants of something that was good and great, but it's been altered to appeal to people that were never there for it in the first place. And once Hollywood gets past that too, I think we'll see a lot of properties or just a lot of things in general have a longer lifespan, and it won't be relegated to a trilogy or a 4-film arc or something like that. It could be something that lasts 10, 20, 30 years long. Look at James Bond. James Bond lasted from 62 to 02 without a reboot or a change or anything. And
no,
people
they had a
back
revival though. The James Martin Campbell, revived James Bond with GoldenEye because they were worried, but they didn't break continuity with it. Like that was the thing that was, like overall continuity. They didn't break the franchise by bringing in Pierce Brosnan and Judi Dench as M. Like it's like there you go. They changed the gender of M, but M was always been an appointment because they had different actors playing the character.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, yeah, they brought it into the 90s without betraying what made Bond Bond. And I'm like, wow, that's really fantastic. And again, by that point, they were at what, like 18 movies in ish?
Yeah, I believe GoldenEye's number 17.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. There you go. 17. And Pierce Brosnan's run was really good, except for unfortunately the last one, but that came down to they got ahead of themselves. But that was something unheard of. Like there's never been a movie franchise that had that many entries into it that was that consistent with its fan base and grew and passed from generations. And then the next one to do that was Marvel. And they did it in a much more condensed time frame.
Oh yeah. Would they pump out 20 films in 8 years?
Pretty much.
Not even 8 years.
Because it was one movie a year for a good while there. Except for Thor and Captain America, they came out at the same time in same year, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm. Both 2011.
Both 2011, and then it was two movies a year for a couple of years, and then it went to 3 movies a year. And by the time of Endgame, they were shooting for 4 movies in 1 year. And if they didn't have the lack of quality and the pandemic, you probably would have had a Marvel movie, 5 Marvel movies a year.
You know, when they were good, I used to say, man, you could put out a Marvel movie a month, like a comic book, and I'd be there day one to see the shit. Like I used to
Yep.
be invested that heavily. And I always say these things with like a heavy heart. I don't take pleasure in these movies sucking. I'm not here to bitch about wokeness and all this crap. I really want to go to a theater and see the medium that I've dedicated my life to wanting to be a part of succeed and bring more people in. Because when comic book movies succeed, comic books succeed, and other people want to, get involved. And I want to see my favorite medium survive forever. I don't want to watch it die because I'm pissed off at Brie Larson or pissed off at, Victoria Alonso's politics. I'm not the Joker. I don't want to watch the world burn in terms of this medium. I want to see this thing survive and be healthy because it's important to American art. But that being said, I'm no longer in that place. Like Guardians of the Galaxy 3, I saw it because I moved home on a Wednesday and I needed something to talk about for the show on Thursday. So I went and saw Guardians of the Galaxy 3. Dude, I don't even think I saw all the trailers for that. It was so low on my radar, and these shows are low on my radar. And I always preface the way I preface with the whole comic book fan thing because, like, you're not going to find somebody more into it than me. Like, seriously, if I had the millions of dollars right now, I'd go out and buy original fucking artwork and display it in my home. Like, I'm at that level. I love it that much. But if you're turning me off, you made a mistake because I will sit through, your Fox X-Men movies. I will sit through Spider-Man 3. I will still pick it up on disc just to have the collection. Man, I couldn't give two squirts of piss about 90% of what's come out since the pandemic. It's been so bad.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I mean, my part goes a little bit further. It's not just the sad state of the comic book and superhero films. It's the fact that they're spending so much money on them. It kills me because Hollywood likes to brag that they have unlimited wealth and budgets. They really don't. And you're looking, I'm seeing independent filmmakers looking at the budget projections or the budget announcements of these films. And they're all saying it's like, I don't get how they're spending $200 to $300 million on a superhero film when all the stuff we're seeing in camera and on screen can be done for an eighth of that. And there's definitely a valid argument when it comes to the cast and how expensive they can be. But and I knew this lesson back in 2006 when I was starting working, which is that if you have a hit A-list actor that's only an A-list actor in your superhero or IP film, guess what? They're not really worth that much. They're worth a lot for the franchise, but not as much overall. And you should not be spending a whole lot of money on them only for your film. You should be looking at what is their quote across the board with anything else. Christian Bale was Batman for 6-7 years with the Dark Knight trilogy. He was able to command some decent cash from that. But anything outside of Batman, he was not getting what he was getting paid for Batman. And that's kind of the metric you should be as a producer paying attention to. Robert Downey Jr. is a character actor who knocked it out of the park with Iron Man. And his agents did the right thing by saying, listen, this is Robert Downey Jr. He's the reason Iron Man is successful, which is actually partially true because they had to rewrite all the dialogue of Iron Man for that movie to work. Because they had the script, they had the sets built, they had everything all set to go, but they all knew that the dialogue wasn't working. And Robert Downey Jr. was able to convince Favreau that, yeah, this is not working. We can do better. And that's what he would do. Robert Downey Jr. would be walking in every morning into Jon Favreau's trailer with crumpling up the pages they were shooting that day and throwing them at him, says, we got to fix the dialogue here. And Favreau and his team would work together and they would rewrite that dialogue as quickly and as effectively as they could, fitting it in with the rest of their story, and get it out to everybody for that day to do a quick rehearsal and then shoot and then go for it. And you can listen to an interview by Jeff Bridges talk about that. We had no idea what he was going to say or what type of scene he was going to be doing when he got to set. But he knew where it was. And guess what? You can't write a movie and shoot it at the same time because you got to build a set for them to go to. So they rewrote all the dialogue on that. And in that regard, like Robert Downey Jr. does definitely had his input in shaping Marvel films at that point. But and if it wasn't a Marvel movie, he couldn't get the 10, 20, $30 million paychecks that he was able to get at Marvel. And the fact that Marvel wasn't paying attention to the career, and the fact that also Warner Brothers and other studios don't pay attention to their actors' careers outside of the movies they're doing, is a big problem when it comes to these budgets, because agents are sharks. Or maybe put it better, scorpions. They'll ride your back across the river, but if they see an opportunity to sting you, they'll do it. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that was made out there, is that the Disney's budgets inflated when, actors like Paul Rudd, Robert Downey Jr., Chris Evans, Chris Hemsworth, and co said, yeah, we'll do it for $20 million or $25 million. And at no point did Disney go, what? Like, are you getting $25 million for the Warner Brothers picture? That's, Sherlock or Universal horror film or a Paramount comedy? No. Well, why are you asking that for here? Well, you're Marvel. Yeah, we're Marvel, but you're you. It's like, your quote is this. I'll give you this, maybe 10% more, maybe 1 point off the gross. But I'm not spending $25 to $50 million for you on this thing. That's crazy. And the fact that they didn't do that showed how terrible a business Disney is. And that's also why, Robert Downey Jr. is gone. That's why Chris Hemsworth is gone. Sorry, not Chris Hemsworth. Chris Evans is gone. Too many Chris's.
I agree. There's also Chris
damn it,
Pratt.
parents, be more creative. But I mean, that's the thing. Like, you can get Chris Evans now for maybe $3 million because he's not doing anything. He's a household name, but like, guess what, man? If you want him back as Captain America, you can get him for $3 million. He'll do it. And if his agent says, well, he's worth 30, it's like, no, he's not. He's maybe worth 30 million in a Marvel movie, but he hasn't done a Marvel movie in a while, so he's worth 3.
Dude, I'll be completely honest, as a fan, him coming back, if he was like the lead of all this crap and still out there, because like you lost him and Iron Man in the same movie, and I was like, those are my 2 favorites. He's cool and good on his own. Like, I'd buy into Captain America kind of just being the lead of the MCU. It was nice to give him that send-off, but like, you're going to have to bring him back and undo the send-off. This overly, like, I don't know, emotional, thoughtful closeout was cool for the time, but like, you can't follow that up. And I'm glad you brought up the budget thing too, because that Variety article that dropped, how they're thinking about bringing back the original 6 Avengers, that's going to be a costly endeavor. Do you think if Marvel opens the paycheck or the checkbook up for that, do you think that people are going to run back to theaters to see the original Avengers, or do you think that's just, it's too late?
It's not too late, because listen, franchises don't die in Hollywood. They just go dormant, because they'll always come back at some point, in some way, in some regard. Things you've never heard of before will be revived and remade. What's funny is that a few weeks ago on my Patreon, I did an audio file where I said, this is how you can actually bring back Captain America and solve all of the MCU problems. And if you haven't seen it on Patreon, please subscribe to that and listen to it. It's a 12-minute pitch. Explains how you can make it work, how you can weave in X-Men and Fantastic Four and so forth. But if they're bringing it back, number one, that's a sign of desperation. So that's going to look bad to the people that have been following Marvel intimately at a certain tier. For your normies and general audiences that are fans of the film, maybe if they're not too excited as they are recently, but if they see those names coming back, they will be. These are what's called the stunt casting lemmings. So these are the people that you bring an actor from another franchise or an adjacent franchise into your project. They'll be like, oh, wow, this is great. And it's inspired. It's kind of like bringing John Wesley Shipp into the Flash TV series. It's like, oh yeah, because he was the Flash in the 90s. Yeah, no, that's a stunt casting. They're not doing it for talent. They're doing it because they want to try and get the people that have nostalgia for him as a performer in that role back as part of the niche and core audience to follow their trite show. So it is a stunt casting or maneuver, but if they don't have a good enough story to make their return worth it, then you're just burning your money and wasting everyone's time. And that's the thing. Like the Secret Wars with the Beyonder, you can bring those characters in and it works into the function of the Beyonder. He can pluck people from out of any space-time continuum he wants and puts them on that planet to put them together to decide who is more powerful, good or evil. Like, that's what the Secret Wars is. And you can do a lot with that. But it's not going to mean anything if you have nowhere to go after the point. And yeah, if you can't reconcile the mistakes that have been made creatively with the previous films, and all you can do is basically say, well, we're doing a hard reset, you're betraying the audience that you built up over since 2008 to now because of that. Like, you're already betraying them by giving them, subpar quality films, but now you're ultimately betraying them by saying, yeah, that thing that you helped us build, yeah, we're ignoring it now. We're starting brand new. So those 33 films, 34 films, what have you, that's by the time they do this, yeah, they mean nothing now. This is the new starting point. Thank you for your time. Have a nice day. Like, that's going to hurt, because now everybody's going to look at that collection and be like, yeah, those are great movies, but now they're not connected to the new direction that they're going at the MCU. So what's the point of these now? Why would I guess I go back and rewatch them for nostalgia, but they're not going to have that continuity anymore. They completely abandoned it. And that's gonna do severe damage to Marvel. In fact, it might actually end up putting a stop on them getting funding and them getting underway with making more films. And you might end up having Kevin Feige or whoever ends up succeeding him at Marvel Studios be doing smaller things that aren't going to get as much traction or press. And who knows? You might end up seeing a brand new a reboot of another MCU film, another superhero, where they start a brand new universe, and you're thinking, oh yeah, we as audience, they needed a 5 or 6 year break. But when you look a little deeper, it's like, nope, they did a bunch of Disney Plus specials or very low budget films that didn't look directly like Marvel, but were Marvel. And did that all just to kind of keep the lights on in the office until they could actually start a brand new reboot. And it's it would be a mistake for them to do it in that regard, because you're not really solving the problem. You're just saying we're starting all over again, but we still have the same people that got us here in the background.
I just, I've never even taken that account or taken it or looked at it from that angle. Excuse me. That's what I mean to say. I've never looked at it from that point. I've just kind of looked at it as, this is desperation. I'm sure, certain people will buy into it because, people buy into some of the dumbest crap out there. But I don't think that would be enough for me to get super excited for it, because it would always feel like, when is the ball going to drop? It's like, how long are they going to be here for? And we've seen how bad they are without these characters. And so they're going to be kind of stuck. I don't think they picked the right characters to push post, Endgame. I mean, I like Spider-Man. That's a different story, but Spider-Man works on his own. Like, you don't need the MCU. You don't need other superheroes. I mean, we grew up in it, or like we personally, but like when I was a kid in grade school is when the first Spider-Man comes out. He didn't team up with anybody. Spider-Man is still the big deal. I bet you if he wasn't over at Sony, you'd see a lot more Spider-Man on film, which I was thinking about this earlier. And I want to ask you, do you think it's good that we don't see Spider-Man on film very often? Or do you think he's such a good character that it doesn't matter and they could do a lot with him? And it really wouldn't, as long as it's good, you really can't burn out the welcome of Spider-Man.
I think it's smart for Sony to try and keep the films contained, because, and this is something I know some people might disagree with, but superheroes in general lend themselves to the long form story format, which means that they really shouldn't be in theaters. They should be on television. And the streaming service model is actually quite perfect for them, because you can have cinematic level shows of these characters that can go on for a while. And it's a lot less of a burden on the pocketbook, because if you had a Robert Downey Jr. Iron Man television series that lasted as long as he was playing the character in the MCU, you're looking at maybe a 200 episode series of Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man in a multitude of adventures, even pairing up with the Avengers. That would have been probably one of the biggest properties ever on television, especially if they did it with the responsibility and teams that they had when they started the MCU on the film side of things. All the assets are easy to do. Every season you get a brand new Iron Man armor upgrade model type of thing. It lends itself to that. Spider-Man especially, like Spider-Man, you could do so much on television. Like if I got a chance to be showrunner or co-showrunner of a Spider-Man series, I'd be starting him at 17, take him all the way through college, marrying Mary Jane, and I'd probably end it with the birth of their first kid, and put him into a position where he's like, yep, he is now a mentor level superhero where he's no longer afraid of his responsibilities. He's figured out, he's got his act together, he's figured everything out, and he has his one last adventure, but now he's there for the birth of his child, doesn't miss it. And it's his kid's not kidnapped by Green Goblin or anything. It's just that story there. Like that's how you end that series. Everything's, the happy ending thing for the hero, where you're like, yep, he's got his family, he's still gonna be protecting New York, swinging away, but he's now turned into the hero that he's always kind of meant to be once that spider bit him. That's kind of the progression that you can do, and it works for that. The films themselves, they take 2 to 3 years to make, so you're fighting against the time when with regards to your perfect cast. Robert Downey Jr. is 58 years old. He's going to be 60 by the time he comes back for Iron Man, if he ends up getting a deal out of it. Again, he's on strike. The rumors and the announcements are stuff that probably occurred before the strike, which is why they're able to talk about it in the press. And until that strike's resolved, you're not going to hear any real progression or confirmation out of there, unless it turns out that RDJ has gone FICOR and left the union to work for Disney, which on the social scale of things would not look good for him or his career move, because Disney's not a very well-received company these days. So yeah, there's a lot to be desired in that. I think Spider-Man, if you pick the right stories and you pace it well, you can get a good 6 movies out there with one actor before you probably have to recast. And
I wish you wouldn't have brought up the TV show, because now all I can think about is how great that would be.
I mean, we got something really close to that with Nicholas Hammond back in the 70s, but again, technology was so limited at that time that that television series did as best it could to try and replicate Spider-Man. But nowadays, things are a lot easier. You can do the assets in a way with especially with the new kind of scanning technology. You can literally create Spider-Man swinging as a digital plate and film him at any angle. So you could just render one thing and basically like, okay, we've got this one version of Spider-Man swinging and whatnot, and now we can plug him into the shot and we can do it at any angle that we want. So you've just saved yourself tons of time, and you can have him swinging through the streets of New York City and your actor doing the voiceover for whatever's going on through his head as he's doing that. And then the only stuff you have to really reshoot in that regards of the special effects is if he catches somebody or falls or like everything else in between. You can just, copy and paste and insert, which you could not do until a few years ago. Same thing for Iron Man and Captain America, Thor flying through the air, all that type of stuff. The shrinking and growing of Ant-Man / Giant Man, or Hope Man, or Janet Van Dyne and the Wasp. It's so much easier on the special effects side of things that you can get away with it. The only thing that's going to hold you back is, do you have great cast, good directors, and a heck of a writing team that knows how to tell great stories with these characters and weave them in between each other. On the cinematic side of things, they bounced back and forth in quality and then dropped completely off, of course. But I still am a fervent believer that if you want to do superhero stuff, as fun as it is to kind of have those feature films, their format base is episodic. And maybe you can do events that are theatrical. Like
that'd be great.
Infinity War worked as a theatrical stuff. If there was a TV series that led up to Infinity War, people would still go to the theaters and see it. No question about that.
I've talked about, or at least with my friends talked about a Spider-Man show, how I would love where it's like, I don't know, let's say the season's him fighting Kingpin and the mob, blah blah blah, but you don't ever have him fight the Kingpin. Then you put that in the movie theaters, or you
Mhm.
have like now that you talked about it, shit, you could do a season in high school.
Yeah.
Hell, even 2 seasons in high school, maybe make it a senior year in high school, then jump to college for a couple seasons, then have him drop out like he does in the book, deal with the social and the personal. Like Spider-Man works because he appeals to everybody, male and female, because it's not just superheroing. It's got the social drama. It has the human element of not feeling good enough. The themes that Spider-Man tackles are themes that both men and women talk about, feel, think about, all of those things. And it appeals to kids and older people because this, like, as a kid, I'd read Spider-Man for the fun and the art and this and that. Now I read as an adult, I'm like, oh, okay. Now they're trying to, create this drama or this or that, things that I understand better. And my God, if you put that on TV, man, I don't say you want to make a show overstay its welcome, kind of like a Supernatural, but you could do 10 seasons of Spider-Man easy before you even, run out of all the big storylines because there's so many to hit. You could even, the final, hell, you could go 7 or 8 seasons, then jump to Venom. Then you could do all the symbiote crap in its own season. Like, there are so
Yeah.
many things you could do.
Yeah. And you can also skip the Clone Saga easily. Like the thing is you've got the decades worth of stories that you can actually see, okay, this worked, this didn't. And you just refine the timeline for your season for that. Same thing can happen with Batman. You can write out Jason Todd if you so want, and nobody would be blink twice at it if you wanted to. You would, like, they did Superman on TV 4 times, 5 maybe. They've done them a lot on television, and each one has been moderately successful to a degree, but you can have fun with that. There's lots of stories to tell, and there's ways to do it affordably, and if you have the right team involved, make it epic. I mean, the MCU would be phenomenal if you had because again, you could have you could the way you could do it if you want to do 10 episode seasons of these characters, that's 10 weeks a year. You could do 5 Marvel superhero shows a year, back-to-back seasons that debut. So you could do a Spider-Man, Iron Man, Thor, Hulk, Captain America, and Fantastic Four television series. And you could have it all in 1 year, each 10 episodes, week by week. And you can, after you do those season 1, your season 2, you can do a couple of crossovers here and there. And you could have that going for 5 to 10 years with that same cast, and you do a lot of adventures. And as long as you just keep the shows relatively isolated and have a few crossovers here and there, you can make it work. And we have an existing model of that. It was written terribly, but it exists. And that was with Greg Berlanti's Arrowverse. They did it. It was really bad, but they did it, and they showed it can actually work. And even though they had abysmal ratings, they still had enough ratings where they could sell the show internationally to pay the bills until CW was just given for free to another network, and they cut everything. So like, it can work.
And I would love for it to happen. Maybe that's what they'll shoot for in the future when they realize, people aren't going to see them in cinemas, and we spent all this. I mean, look, they made their money back on Marvel how many times over at this point? I know the movies are expensive to make, but what are we talking, like $30 billion at the box office or some crazy amount of fucking money over the course of these movies?
On average, I think they're at 27 billion as their box office take. And so cut that in half for general expenses overall and losses. And so you've got $13 billion, and they spent 4 for it. So yeah, they definitely paid for themselves and then some. And that's just using rudimentary math. If you want to go into the stuff that's far more details with their pre-sales, the merchandising, they've definitely made their money back and then some. They probably paid for some of Star Wars at this point.
It have to.
But some, not all, because Star Wars has still lost a lot of money. But yeah, again, it's been incredibly successful. And as things get easier to do and digital effects and people are pushing for more in-camera stuff, and you can actually get away with a lot more in camera these days than you ever could, especially with the new volume technology. They're just not using it right, personally, but that'll change soon enough. But there's always opportunities. Who knows how it's going to develop in the next few years? But I could bet dimes to dollars that by the time our kids are our age, there will be Marvel television shows and event movies running concurrently, and with any luck, they'll be phenomenally written, and people will really like them again.
So, in terms of this movie coming up on Thursday, The Marvels, what do you guess is the opening box office? Do you think it's going to be Flash levels low? It was at 65 million or 55 million, like Black Adam, or do you think
I'm thinking
exceed
between 30 and 40.
Ooh, okay.
Only because the only names that are in there, and these are names, is Samuel L. Jackson and Brie Larson. That's it. And Brie Larson is a name for mixed reasons.
Mhm.
And the Marvel brand doesn't earn the draw anymore. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead. You're just finishing your point. Do you think, because you've talked about this in the past on the show, and I just wanted to ask if you still feel the same way, that the actors' strike, without her being able to go and promote the film, is hurting it as much as, is it hurting it, do you think? Or do you think it's actually a positive since she can't say anything to annoy people?
I think it's hurting it because prior to the actor strike, Brie Larson has actually matured into a far more useful adult. Oddly enough, it is. The thing is that I remember seeing her on the press tour for 21 Jump Street and Room, and she was charming, affable. There's a reason people thought she was going to be a big star, and a reason why Marvel swooped in and grabbed her. That changed because, much like what Disney has done, even with their child actors, they have tainted their talent. They get them to say stupid things. In fact, I know there's the common phrase like, "Oh yeah, we have writers, directors, and actors constantly calling us names and stuff." It's like, well, I've been looking for the details on that, and the only one I can confirm for sure is Ryan Johnson using the term "man babies." Everyone else has been kind of an ancillary producer or a journalist, like manipulating certain responses that are logically inferred by audiences that they're being name called, but it's not as a solid of an evidence as someone actually just saying that to them. Like, I don't think Ewan McGregor called any Star Wars fan racist. I think he said people that are acting like racists are not good Star Wars fans, and nobody who's a Star Wars fan would ever consider themselves racist or think that he's talking about them, because if you've never done it, you're not in that boat. Like, because that's how that relationship works. But if you've never done it and you think he's talking about you, that's just a misinterpretation on your part, because actors are as foolish as they can be. They're also very, very conscious of how they direct their ire. Because again, if you preface something like, "I don't believe my Star Wars fans of Star Wars, the fans that I've experienced are bigots or racist or evil or blah, 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 blah," any of those types of things. And he's like, "But I'm seeing behavior from people that are claiming to be you, and I don't believe that they're you." And that's what they're saying. And that's what you should be paying attention to. But then also call them out, be like, "Listen, don't assume just because I say I hate something that I'm part of that group." And if they respond, "Well, you are," then that's when they've drawn the line. But if they say, "I don't think you are," then, they're on your side, but maybe they've got pressure from the powers that be, the people that write their checks and allow them to continue to work, to imply something else. And I will say that some of the things I have seen actors do have been really up to the line, and only the ones that are arrogant and foolish have crossed it. And there's a reason we don't hear from them anymore. So, I think you got to be a little bit careful on that. I think if Brie Larson was allowed to promote this, she would probably be a little more disciplined, a little less obnoxious. She probably wouldn't be doing that stuff she did with Chris Hemsworth and about the stunts and things of that nature.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah. The actress who's playing Monica Rambeau, some of the stuff I've seen her promote on other projects prior to the strike, she was fun and charming, and I didn't see anything that would be considered controversial. The young girl who plays Miss Marvel, she is just excited to be there. She's a little kid, happy to be getting a job and playing in the universe that any of us would be thrilled to participate in as well. She is very girly, so that can be, your Valley Girl annoyance trope, but that's peanuts compared to being said, oh, a 40-year-old white guy is not made for you, right? So people can weather that quite a bit. So I think that if they were able to go on the promotional tool, they probably would have been able to win over more of the normies. And they'd probably also have to face, especially Brie Larson would have to face the trolls of, well, you said all these things during Captain Marvel. If she was stupid enough to fall for that and respond to it, then yeah, you're looking at more damage to be done. But if she ignores it or finds some way to turn it into a joke to make her more humble appealing, that would be a good sign, because I would show like, oh yeah, she's not being a Jennifer Lawrence, so to speak.
Well, I know a lot of people just have zero interest in this, and so you're guessing in the 30s. I'll guess 50 for some reason. I feel like it can make that much, but you're not hearing American Eagle buy tickets and give everybody that spends $50 on their store a free movie ticket and have that count towards the box office. I'm sure you won't hear about the box office shenanigans about how you remember the whole controversy, how
I
so
remember
many theaters had empty seats and stuff.
the charity thing for giving girls tickets to a movie. Listen, I have problems with charities general, most of them, like 99% of them, because they don't try to solve the problem they address. The ones that do, it's a problem that is shrunk, and I support some of those, like anything with regards to like sick kids, St. Jude Hospital, those types of things. Like, man, I'm on board. But a charity to take kids under, poor kids or terminal kids to go see a movie instead of maybe using that money to actually help with whatever else is going on with them. That's weird, because from a studio perspective, it would be far more ethical if they just said, we are buying a theater ourselves and we're giving it to these kids, in addition to also donating them a whole bunch of money to help them ease their pain, suffering, what have you, for whatever ailment or issue they're going through. Because the studios have that money to work with a charity where the charity is giving the studios money to compensate them for ticket sales is unethical to me, and unethical and egregious to the children that it's purportedly trying to help. Like, it's just, and that bothered me a lot with the Captain Marvel film, and it bothers me with any type of movie that's trying to do that for charity. Like, I thought the Pay It Forward program for Sound of Freedom was better, because it went into a fund, and then if you couldn't afford the ticket, you could draw that fund paid for your ticket, and someone else donated it to you. You're the recipient. You as the customer are the recipient, and that money just didn't go to buy tickets that weren't claimed. And that's the other part too. They had to be claimed, and that transferred across all the other markets it went to until that money was all tapped out. And if there was anything left over, I think Angel Studios put that towards something else. And I'm like, well, that's better, because that's not using a third party and children as, advertisement for your film, which is what Captain Marvel did.
Speaking of Sound of Freedom, was there any word on, like, is that movie kicking ass on home video, or has it reached home video yet? Or
It's debuting, I believe, on Amazon Prime. You can rent it over there, and I think they'll be releasing a physical copy, probably ideally for the holidays. I hope so. It was a really solid film, and quite well done, even though I would say Caviezel is probably the weakest performer in all of that film.
I still want to see it. It was in this community, people talked about it all summer long. And, I'm happy to hear people talk about a movie so positively. This was a year of moving home, taking care of business, doing some personal stuff. So I still have to check it out. It's going to hit Prime soon. I'm a subscriber, so I'm going to watch it just to, see what everyone's talking about. Plus, I want to catch up on all the big movies of the year. Honestly, if I could do like I did in 2012, I went to the movie theater like 52 times that year, honestly, because I had nothing better to do. My buddy and I would go to the movie every week, and I mean every week. And then the next year hit, we saw just a handful of movies. Like there was something about 2012 where I saw, you name it, I was there in theaters for it. And I want to go back to that. I have the Regal Pass. I have, I kind of can make the time to do it, especially with this, YouTube as a job stuff. And we could turn it into channel videos. But there's just, I wish there was more out there to get me that excited. Like, I didn't go see Five Nights at Freddy's. I guess it has to do with streaming, because if it debuts on streaming at the same time, why am I going to spend extra money when I already pay for the streaming service?
That's the other part too. Like,
that much?
Well, here's the thing. Gas prices are high, right? So you're not just paying for the movie ticket, you're paying for gas. And then depending on where you live, if a city or in your rural area, some movie theaters have pay parking and some have a free parking lot for their theater. So there's those expenses that factor in. Then you got concessions for some people, because majority of moviegoers want to eat, and concessions are priced through the roof. So it's not an affordable thing to do as much as I'd like it. Like, isolated wise, movie tickets, affordable, but the process to get there comes with a dollar value as well. That's not always factored in. So that's why I think people are kind of preferring streaming in some regards. And I think that's fair. But we're also, when the streaming model itself, or at least the people behind streaming as it is currently, are not trying to do it to get eyes on their show or streaming service or streaming show, the same way that a lot of independent films are trying to get people's eyes on their movie. Like, you got to take risks. You got to put in the effort. You can't just rely on the name brand type of thing. One of the movies that I thought was really great this year that was an Apple Plus film was Tetris. And it was the story about getting the handheld rights for Tetris for Nintendo. Oh,
I missed out on that one.
I think that's on Apple Plus, and it was really good. It's got Taron Egerton in it from the Kingsman films, who also played Elton John, and it's a really fun, Rockman. Yeah, it was really good movie. One of the ones I remember from this year that stuck out. Unlike Cocaine Bear, which I remember for all the wrong reasons. The reasons I was worried about, it was basically this year's Snakes on a Plane.
I thought Cocaine Bear was going to be amazing. I thought it was fine, but I've never watched it again, and I don't think I ever will.
Cocaine Bear should have had a climactic fight between a shirtless Ray Liotta physically fighting the bear, both on cocaine. That would have made the movie epic. And the fact that the guys behind it didn't figure out that was a logical conclusion to that type of premise shows that they only thought about the premise and nothing more. And that's our problem with movies these days. They only think about the premise and nothing more.
That was definitely this year's big disappointment. One surprise one for me was Operation Fortune. I really liked that movie. Have you had a chance to watch it? The Guy Ritchie movie?
No, but I should check that out. I'm not the biggest Guy Ritchie of fans, but every once in a while he does knock one out of the park. So I should check out Operation Fortune. I'm putting that on my list.
If you like James Bond, I'm pretty sure you're going to like this movie, because it was more James Bond than it was it was more James Bond than No Time to Die was James Bond. So, as somebody that's always hungry for another James Bond-like film, at least somebody else has given it to me. Like, I thought Kingsman and Operation Fortune were more 007 than anything I've seen from Daniel Craig.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, God. That first Kingsman movie, that is brilliant and very underrated. And if the sequel didn't suck, that would have been a good counter to current day James Bond. And
they kind of feel like modern day Roger Moore 007 films.
They do. I mean, well, I think, they have a bit more fun with it. That if you want a great example of a character growth and arc, watch the first Kingsman film, because you've got Eggsy, the main character, who talks like a poor bloke living in council housing, which is like government sponsored housing. And he's got slang. And then as he spends more time with basically Galahad, I think his name is, Galahad. He loses the slang and becomes more gentlemanly because he's emulating a role model, and he's dropping his attitude, and he's figuring out the responsibility of what he needs to do and what he wants to do. And he's completely, his ethics are still as they are, but he's more disciplined, and he's completely changed as a bum to a gentleman spy. And it's a heck of a transformation.
And he gets the princess in the end too.
Oh, does he ever?
Literally.
Yeah. I mean, that whole like, I'll be right back. Just that's a very Roger Moore type of thing. Like, oh, I'm just keeping up appearances for the British flag, that type of thing. And Spy Who Loved Me.
Yep, keeping the British end up, sir.
Yes, thank you. Keeping the British end up, sir.
I got to see Kingsman on a free pre-screening. Was it like 2011 movie or no? Because that was X-Men. Like, was 2012, 2013? Okay. I liked it enough that I bought it. So I'm a Kingsman guy through and through. I still need to see that final one, but was that this year or last year?
It was 2021. That's with
okay.
Ralph Fiennes. It's an okay. It definitely edges some wokeness to it with one of the female characters, but it's just right up onto the edge because it's trying to also be a little bit authentic to World War I period as well.
Now, I'm going to check in with the audience in just a second. I just want to ask you two quick things. One, did you have a chance to watch the South Park Pandaverse special?
Yeah.
Did you like it?
I thought it was brilliant, but not for the reasons a lot of people on YouTube thought. And
oh, really?
Yes, because them going after Kathleen Kennedy is a byproduct of what the theme of the episode was, which was relying on technology to do things you can't when you know you can. Because that's what the Panderstone is. You rely on the Panderstone to make the movie because instead of doing it yourself, you rely on the handyman or some sort of phone app to do something that you can do yourself. The pivotal scene of that is when Randy is asking Siri how to fix the oven door, and it gives him specific instructions on what to do. And now my Siri has responded it because I brought up her name, and and he gets told exactly what he has to do, and all he has to do is do it, but he doesn't because he's Randy, and Randy is the king of South Park. It's brilliant because that's what it is, and it highlights the brilliance of the fact that when you defer general understanding of skills required to function in favor of theory or academics or responding to trolls, you lose your own value in society. And I thought it was absolutely brilliant that Randy and Kyle's dad and all these other father figures and people working in general office jobs were basically hanging out outside of the Home Depot looking for handyman as an inverse to the immigrant worker just looking for a job because they are handymen. That was what was brilliant. The whole Kathleen Kennedy thing is just a byproduct of that. It's like, well, who's an easy target that best represents that on the creative side of things? Oh, that's Kathleen Kennedy. Now, who's the target that represents that on outside of the creative things in the real world? Well, that'd be Randy Marsh. And what's the real world saying? It's like, yeah, the younger generation relies so much on their phone and applications and other people with actual experience and skills who also happen to be good 20 years older than you to fix things for them, as opposed to learning how to do it themselves. And what was Kathleen Kennedy's flaw in that thing? She relied on a stone to do a job that she should be capable of doing on her own, which she does have a career to state that she probably did contribute to something, but didn't. And I thought the joke of Cartman sending 12,000 written letters to Kathleen Kennedy a day was funny. And I liked how they fed into each other, even though she made the mistake first. Cartman feeding her fear made it grow exponential. And that was what the point of the episode was. It was, if something sucks, fix it yourself if you can. And if you can't, you're welcome to complain about it, but that's not the only thing you should be doing. And that was kind of what's funny is, especially when those guys, they ordered the catapult and they had to get a handyman to come and build it for them.
That was hilarious.
So, I mean, that was what the running up thing was. And yes, the YouTube videos, the Twitter stuff, the Instagram things, South Park destroys Disney. No, Disney destroyed itself, man. They were just shooting fish in a barrel to get, your thing out there, because if you pay close attention to when Cartman is in the Panderverse, Kyle, Stan, and Kenny, the female versions, do not sound any different than the Kyle, Stan, and Kenny of South Park. And that's one of the things that's actually quite critical of what a Pander thing was doing, is that the characters, not only are they race and gender swap, they aren't recognizable anyways of who they're supposed to be. But female Kenny and male Kennedy commenting on this other girl's knockers, like, that's not Pandaverse stuff. Like, that's the lazy race swap. And that's what's kind of also funny, is that they just did a lazy race swap with the Pandaverse. They're still the exact same characters. But what's the complaint that we have here, not just in the race swapping, is that not only are they race swapped, they're also nothing like the characters that they're replacing or being race swapped away. And they're different, and they're saying things that are just not true to what they are. And the closest you get to that in the South Park episode is Cartman, when he complains about his weight, he throws in that one line of the patriarchal standards. And it's like, okay, that's one thing, you're getting close, but you're not committing to it. And then when he's in the Pandaverse, like, everything's just normal. He's just surrounded by diverse women. And there's not a single man in there except for Cartman, if you can call him a man.
Yeah, close enough. I appreciated it. I did like the whole point about the we went to college for no reason type of thing. That made me laugh, because there are times where I feel like that. It's like, God damn, all this debt for what? But I did enjoy, obviously, because we've been working in the whole YouTube sphere with this topic for years. So it was cool to see it on a big TV show. But I did like at the end when Cartman was like, yeah, it's pretty lazy to rail on everything being woke too. I was like, thank God. Because, like, I'm all about making fun of the stuff. Believe me, we've been doing it longer before anyone else, really. But there's a point where you got to look for a deeper way. Like, I took away, like, if you're going to critique stuff, look for a deeper way to do it.
Yep.
There's validity to any of these complaints and critiques. Like, you can complain about Snow White changing stuff up, but you don't have to jump to the dreaded W word of woke. You can jump to creatively bankrupt or lazy or this or that. You can talk about historical reasons why, fairy tales are important to society, and changing them, changes the message and the value that they bring. Like, there are all kinds of deeper ways to discuss this stuff. And I really liked that, just even though that wasn't as deep as what they were trying to go for with it, I just enjoyed that point at the very end. It was like, yeah, it's pretty lazy to rail on woke stuff too. Like, I get it, believe me. But yeah. I felt like I feel like they kind of closed the coffin on a lot of this stuff too at the same time.
I think they did a solid job with it. I mean, that's one of the things when I started this channel, the channel that I'm on, not yours, obviously. When I started my channel, I had one rule, which is that try to avoid addressing or talking about woke in any type of broad terms as minimal as possible, because woke is only one of the multitude of problems that's occurring when it comes to television and film. You taking woke out of something doesn't make it better or good. It has to be good first, in the first place. And I did this for two reasons. One, I wanted to identify the root cause of why this is bad. And most of the stuff that I reviewed on my channel has nothing to do with it being woke. The other part too is I wanted to get ahead of the counter argument of them saying, well, you just complain about being woke. It's like, listen, I can point to you many, many, many of my videos, and I have almost 60 video essays of them stuff on my channel where I don't mention the word at all, or even like diversity, inclusion, equity, or any of those types of things. And when, people on social media say, oh, that's what you do, I'm like, well, here's the video that proves my point without using any of those words. Go watch it. And like, I'm not going to watch it. Well, then you're not legitimately concerned about a valid opinion that doesn't meet the very talking points that you think are BS. And it's like, I don't have any of those in there, and you still refuse to watch it. It means that you are not authentic when it comes to your criticism of the people that are criticizing the things that you claim to like. And that's why I did it. And it did not take long before I started running into people that were like that. And when you break through, one of them says, yeah, you actually point out why this show I liked, it sucks. And you didn't use any of the terms that I've heard other channels or other commentators bringing up. It's like, oh yeah, because woke is a problem. It is not the problem. And that's the point. That's why it's been able to and be applied to so many things over the last few years up until recently, is because there was other issues going on. There's lazy writing. There's misunderstanding of character motivation or wants, needs, goals. There's general miscasting because casting directors wanted a pretty face that checked these certain boxes instead of actually wanting someone that has talent as well. There's complete loss of focus, undisciplined directing, terrible cinematography, phoning it in. Like all of those things were far more prevalent in a lot of these shows. Like Loki doesn't really have much woke going on to it, but nothing happens. Nothing absolutely happens. That is a terrible, terrible thing to have in a show, is that nothing happens. And it's there. And here's the other part too. You could probably find some great shows in the past that you could definitely say, okay, it has things that address wokeness, but it doesn't address wokeness any way that is being done recently. And the reason that we can find it, but also not be offended by it, is because it's better written. It's addressing a topic in a far more honest and authentic way, as opposed to that being the narrative stuff. Like you got an episode of All in the Family where Archie Bunker sees that his niece is dating Lionel, the black boy from next door, who
Lionel
Archie actually
Jefferson?
likes Lionel. Like he thinks he's a great kid, but he sees that and he's freaked out by it, and they're having fun with it. And he has to realize that it's not a big deal. And like, that is a very, would be considered a woke message. However, it's done way better in All in the Family. Yet you do that today, there is no humor. There's not going to be any humor regarding that at all. It's Archie Bunker will be just this bigoted racist. He'll probably get a shotgun and go after to try and shoot the guy, and maybe even shoot his niece too, because she betrayed his family. It's like the woke part is not the problem with there. The problem is that the character isn't real and it isn't believable, and the reaction that they're having to that problem is not authentic. And that's just, and it comes down to lazy writing.
It does. I mean, I mean, you and I both write stuff. That's maybe a small way to say it, but yeah, lazy writing bothers me, and I roll my eyes at so many things. And I just, wanted to pick your brain on the South Park thing because I really enjoyed it. I thought it was funny, and
too.
it's fun to always look at South Park to kind of get to some of the issues in society. Like, how does South Park get it right so many times? Other places don't even tackle these topics, but when you know South Park's about to address it, you're like, well, this is probably going to be pretty good. So I'm glad I have Paramount Plus for that kind of stuff.
Me too. And I also really like the one where they're running out of water because of the streaming wars. And I was shocked that, because I thought Randy was going to solve the problem by creating a type of giant bong to use pressure to bring the water from the lake into South Park. But instead, he made fun of the fact that there aren't any boobs in Hollywood anymore because everyone they took all the saline out of the breast implants to put it into the streaming wars. I'm like, that's funny too. Like, that's clever stuff.
I need to go back and watch a lot more South Park because I used to watch it religiously when it was new. And then I think about high school, I stopped watching it as well. I watched it up until about when Chef died. And I wasn't like mad. I just kind of missed the boat. I would only catch it in college here and there. And then, dude, I stopped watching TV in college across the board. And I was like, oh, South Park's still on. I'll watch it again one day. And then I watched the PC Principal season. And that's the last thing I watched pretty regularly. So,
yeah, the PC Principal season when he's like hooked up with Strong Woman, and they got Randy Savage voice coming in there to compete in women's sports was pretty funny. I still think the best South Park in recent years I've seen is the one where Randy, it's like the Magic the Gathering, but they're using chickens to play it, and it's called Cock Magic, and Randy misinterprets that, and you end up seeing all these weird magic shows that Randy is doing.
Oh yeah, I think I have seen that one.
And I'm like, that is brilliant. Like everybody, then that I was with in LA, we'd see that and we just lose our minds. We'd be like in stitches laughing. And then when I came back to Canada and showed my friends this, they're like, yeah, we can't believe they did that. And it's hysterical. And it's just a play on words and just running with it. And it's like, you don't get stuff written that well too often. anymore, especially pushing the edge like they did there.
Yes to the chat about Indiana Jones on the pinball machine. That's my I know it's a crazy thing to say, but when South Park tackled the whole Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull thing, that's kind of when I came to peace with my feelings towards the film, because for months I couldn't reconcile how I felt. It was like, I don't like this movie, but I don't feel compelled to watch, but I can't vocalize how I feel. And then I saw that one, and if I could have like shook their hand on that day, that's the South Park episode that is I don't know if it's my favorite episode, but that's the one where I'm just like, thank you for existing. That was it.
No, they have a good grasp on things too. That's what makes it work. So that's my piece there.
So folks, we're getting ready to read your super chats. So thank you for everyone that sends them in. We usually put them at the end of the show so we can give you the time to talk about them, because if we read them throughout the show, if we just comment on it, I don't want you to feel like, oh, they don't, want to spend the time. But folks, we appreciate each and every one of you. So let's get into the fan portion of this show. Remember to join us live on Thursday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the WCBS podcast. We might tentatively, just thinking, because I think Dion might try to go out and use one of his passes to see this movie, we might start a little closer to 9. So be on the lookout for our tweets over on X. It could be 8:30 or 9, but we'll let you guys know. I'll let you know tomorrow, because I'll talk to Dion about that. But folks, before we start, hit that thumbs up button to let YouTube know that you enjoy this content. I want to thank and welcome a lot of our new subscribers. We're past 194K now, and our toy video in 2 days beat the last ones that have, sat around for about 2 weeks. So you really like that content. I have already gone out to film some more stuff. I'm not going to put them out every week because I feel like it's a little too much, but be on the lookout for another massive one. Script, I went down to Louisville, Kentucky about a month back to go do an Ollie's video, and it turned out great. And then I went up north to film one too, and that's doing well too. So folks, if you want me to travel to more Ollie's, let me know. You know what to do. Share the word, help us get those views up, and WCBS will go everywhere you want us to be. 2024 is going to be an awesome year where we take this show on the road. We might show up in your town, and if we do, come visit and hang out, and be on the lookout for all those announcements on the live shows and the videos proper. And one last thing before we start the super chats, we're brought to you by stealingsolo.com. So to the people that have bought the book on the air, thank you very much. And folks who haven't read it, get yourselves a copy. People in the chat love this book. I've had a lot of great experiences with people sending messages how much they've enjoyed the book. And so thank you to everybody. But next shipment goes out tomorrow, and these books are ready to go. So our pal John Thomas, thank you very much, John. He says, Jeff and ScriptDoctor, your thoughts on the complete gutting of the Blade creative team and that Blade was reduced to the fourth lead in his own movie. Script?
I have a little bit of doubt on the fourth lead part of the film, because I started talking to some screenwriters who have managed to read the script, and I'm trying to get a copy of it myself. And they definitely say that, yeah, there are a number of women in the movie, but Blade is still dominant. They also have remarked that it wasn't very good. So I think there might be some conjecture in that interpretation, but it's a good sign if they're scrapping whatever bad ideas they had before and are going to try something new. I think that's a great sign to have. I think it'd be foolish of them to try and make Blade a rated R film, because it's not required. You can kill vampires in any way you want. That can still stay within PG-13. If you take a look at the source material, if you want to be honoring that, it wasn't very rated R in the comics. In the few issues that he was in there, in the limited series he had, I think people just want R rating because they think that means edgy, and it doesn't. According to the MPA, which was formerly MPAA, R rating is really just gratuitous sex and aggressive language. Blood, guts, things of that nature, you can get away with a lot in PG-13, especially if you're killing supernatural creatures. So there's no requirement for it to be R rated at all. You can actually take the very short nudity at the club in the first Blade movie and all the F-bombs out of Blade, and that would be a PG movie, or PG-13 movie by today's standards, without problem. And guess what? They have, because it's been aired on television, network television and cable television for years with those edits, and not a single problem or thing was lost from the movie. So guess what? There's no justification for an R-rated Blade, especially in current MCU. Even though you may want it, you're not. It's never going to be utilized to its full extent that would actually justify it. So, with that in mind, listen, if they're going back to the drawing board with Blade, that's a good thing, because he's a character that kind of gave the movies that Blade was, along with X-Men and Spider-Man, helped build the Marvel Studios that they have today. And if they're able to find some sort of way to make that work within the current ethos of Marvel, which is not difficult to do, and they can do it and make it an actual Blade movie, I would be down for that. So, but it's been a difficult thing. I don't think they have the best cast. I think they should go with some people that are a lot younger. And I also think they need one heck of a great hook for Blade beyond him just being a daywalker that kills vampires. So we'll see what happens. Apparently, Marvel's going in a different direction. We'll see if what they say matches up with their actions. Those are my thoughts.
I know this isn't gonna happen, but part of me wishes that all these delays would cause Mara Hashara Ali, or however you pronounce his name, I apologize, to step away, and then they're like, you know what, we're desperate, so they just get Wesley Snipes to come back for one more movie. But in reality, I know that won't happen.
Yeah,
he was great. Like, the first Blade is kick-ass. Like, I was on a stream last week with a channel called Articulated Chad. Chad's a great guy. He's a friend of the channel. Folks, make sure you go over there and listen to my interview with Chad. We had a lot of fun. And we were talking about Blade, and I said, I wish Blade 1 was treated by Marvel with the same level of reverence that they try to put on Black Panther. Because I guess people just forget this, but like, that character of Black Panther didn't do anything in the 90s. Like, I can't even name a storyline that he was a part of. He wasn't in the cartoon, that one Avengers show. He didn't really do anything. He wasn't a presence. I don't even think he got a single action figure in the 1990s. And I understand merchandise isn't the litmus test for whatever, but my point is, for an entire generation, they try to make the Black Panther film seem like it is this big cultural event for Black people in America. Sure, if you read comics back in the day, it might be. But if you grew up in an era like I did, Blade was that. And I wish they would have just treated Blade with the same level of, like, first off, I don't want them to treat any movie like it's a cultural thing to really have to go watch in theaters or it makes you a better person. Like, I get that from the Black Panther marketing, and it bothered me. It's just a fucking movie. And stop trying to act like it's going to change race relations around the world. But if you're going to put that on a movie, put it on Blade. Blade actually did change a lot of shit and open up people's eyes to, like, superhero movies. You don't even need to make it race baity or any of that dumb crap like they try to do with Black Panther. Just show the character the same reverence, because for a generation of people, that's the premier Black superhero, not Black Panther. And Jon Stewart Green Lantern's like that too for a lot of people. Pick the ones that people actually like. If you're going to have to go this preachy bullshit route, at least put it on a character that's worth it. Not the shit on Black Panther. The guy, he's cool. Chadwick Boseman was nice. But, like, those movies got a lot of undue whatever. Blade is a really big deal for a generation of people, and I love that movie. That being said, I'm okay with Blade just kind of existing as this 90s thing. I don't really need another Blade movie. I don't think he adds to the MCU. I don't think he'll add to anything, because you said they need a good hook. What's that hook? Are they gonna, get Robert Pattinson to play the vampire from Twilight and have Blade hunt him down? Sign me up for that movie. I'll pay whatever they cost for a ticket.
I think Robert Pattinson would sign up for that too.
He seems normal. Like, he seems pretty cool about a lot of stuff. So I would love to see that happen. That movie would make $1 billion. If you want to make a Blade film and make that much money, hire him.
Blade and Doctor Strange would work because they both dabble in far more closely related areas. Supernatural,
You could really get me on board if they would do street level and then supernatural Marvel. Like, I don't want to see intergalactic every movie. I don't need to see universe and time altering multiverse shit. I would like to just see, Punisher, Spider-Man, even though Doctor Strange deals with the other shit, like, put, Punisher, Blade, and Ghost Rider and Doctor Strange together. That could be cool. You can put Daredevil as a background character in this shit. You can make Spider-Man show up for 5 minutes to sell more tickets. Like, there is a bunch of characters you can do to get people excited, and they ties together. They just don't do the right ones. They pick a bunch of dumb ones, in my opinion.
Yeah, they're not looking at what best relationships work. They're just looking at what sells, and the best relationship always sells, but it's hard to see through because it's like, well, Spider-Man always sells. We put Spider-Man in a Blade movie, that'll work. If they did Blade versus Morbius, Michael Morbius, that could be fun, but like not the Jared Leto Sony stuff, but like a proper one. That there's something there.
It was cool in the cartoon. That's how I first discovered Blade.
Oh yeah, you're right. I'm just remembering it now. That Black Cat was with them too, right?
Yeah, because she was in love with Morbius.
Right. So yeah, there you go. I mean, that's an interesting trio right there.
It would make money because people like these characters. It's all the money is out there. People can spend the money on things they like. You just got to make the things they like. That's all.
And you got to find women that are really attractive and busty, curvy, boobs and butts. That sells, especially for your superheroes.
You're not going to hear me disagree with you at all. Believe me, in the art I produce, it's like, am I going to draw what the people of Twitter think is amazing and whatever this fake beauty standard is today? No, I like what I like. And what I like fits into that traditional, what you like and most guys like and most women like too. So, I'm with you. I know a lot of people would listen to that last part and go, oh, whatever. No, I really do think that's important because film's a visual medium. You have to show people, these things. It's not about making the audience feel comfortable with their own body. Oh, I can't, put this type of woman on screen and it'll make the female audience insecure. That's the dumbest shit because they don't do that for Barbie. Margot Robbie's good looking. You don't think they pulled, it's not like they picked Amy Schumer to play Barbie like they wanted to all those years ago.
Or some anorexic that has nothing. I'm going to do a show. We'll get some people together. We'll each pick 5 actors from any point in time that have the curves and the goods, like the talents and the curves and all that stuff. And we'll just oogle them.
That one.
We'll just oogle them.
I don't know if Sydney Sweeney can act, but she's definitely got the look. So,
I've seen her in Euphoria and another independent film. She's got some range. The only thing she has to do is kind of kill the dead eye stuff when she's on the press junket because she feels like she's kind of like not in her head. I don't know if it's drugs or if it's nerves. But yeah,
I only know her from like pictures on Facebook and like scenes and stuff. So. That's all I can comment on. Same with Alexandra Daddario. She's pretty solid. True Detective's good. She's great in that.
She was pretty good in that. I mean, she got her start like the Percy Jackson films. And I saw her in True Detective. I think the last thing I saw her was the Baywatch movie, which is terrible.
It was
terrible. But like no, she's part of the classic beauty looks as well. Fun fact, Sydney Sweeney's trying to get into directing because she's thinking 10, 15 years down the line. And I'm like, that's a smart. If she's trying to get into directing, she's a lot smarter than people would give her credit for because most actors her age with her beauty don't even think about a career, don't even realize that they have a ticking clock on them for women because there's that period, no pun intended, where women stop being beautiful. They have this weird, awkward face, and then they start playing the mothers and older characters. Smart actors know to be mindful of that and figure out what to do in between those zones. Scarlett Johansson is going through that right now. She's going to be uncastable for a few years coming up soon.
I'm going to feel old myself when Scarlett Johansson starts playing moms. Like, oh, because I remember watching like Ghost World and all these. I mean, Home Alone 3 was her first movie. I got that on tape as a kid. So I always have known Scarlett Johansson, but man, I guess I'll have to admit I'm old when she plays people's moms. She's not a superhero anymore, man.
That's for sure.
Shrebbles08 has a button request, and folks, I'm gonna make us a put a chicken at make it gay button. If you watch this week's toy video, I threw a little Easter egg in there, and I even made a little YouTube short so people could check that out. But I'll have the button, and we'll have a lot of fun this Thursday night. So join us live for that. Now, here is the Joe Rogan Battleships button right here.
So have you ever done DMT?
That can be like a mix of another one. Put a chick in it, make it gay. Another one. Put a chick in it, make it gay.
Yes, I will do that. Hold on, let me write that down. That's brilliant. Oh, another one. Chick.
And start throwing up all the clips from all the woke movies that would be that fell under that trap.
Oh my god. Yes. As I write this down in my Legend of Zelda notebook, like seriously, all my notes are in this green. I don't know what the cover's made of, but it's got a gold Triforce like insignia. It's cool.
Oh, cool.
I rock Zelda whenever I can. Now, Shrubbles Await also requested a button. Would you pick a number between 1 and 69, please?
14.
14. Here we go.
Son, this is what happens when you fuck a stranger in the ass.
Love that movie.
Yep.
Number 5 on my all-time favorites list.
That's a good place to have Lebowski.
It just rounds it out, man. Like I saw it when I was really young and I didn't get it, but then I bought it in college because I was like, I think I like this movie, and it's only $10 on DVD. And that, like, the light switch hit, or the light flipped on my head. I was like, this is that great movie I remember it being in.
It's a movie about a background character in a spy thriller or a hostage situation, so to speak. I mean, that's what it is.
Yeah. And there's so many layers to it too. Like, the first couple times I didn't realize Maude was sizing him up to be the father when she's like, go get yourself checked out, Jeffrey. And, maybe I'm biased because the character has the same first name as me, but, the dude abides. I have this Air Jordan t-shirt that instead of Michael Jordan with the basketball or the jump man, it's the dude with a bowling ball. So
love that.
TLJ Screwjob says, Dion looking forward to Black Girl Magic. Well, folks, if you know Dion and you know Wokebusters, it's all about white woman magic for Dion. But I'm sure we'll be laughing at the line Black Girl Magic as I cringe in the theater on Thursday. Can you believe Valkyrie is trying to be sold as this big thing to sell the movie? Like, who gives a shit? That's the worst character crossover to try to be like, guys, it's a huge deal to have Tessa Thompson in this movie. Is it a big deal to have her in any movie?
No, it's not. I mean, Hollywood's trying to. I think she'd be better as a supporting actor, but she doesn't have the allure. I'm not talking about her body or anything like that, because she actually has a very pretty face. There's just something about her where I'm like, I'm not convinced when she's performing. Something's wrong there. She doesn't feel like she's an actor.
I think she's got the bug eyes. If I ever met her, I'd apologize about the bug eyes comment. TLJ Screwjob, thank you very much. He says, saw a photo of Papa Elf from Elf, and it was an interview article with Bob Newhart for the 20th anniversary, November 7th, 2023. He's 94.
Yeah.
I didn't realize Bob Newhart was still alive. I don't want to sound like an asshole. Newhart's not on. I didn't like the show Newhart as a kid because, kids really don't watch Newhart. Mm-hmm. So Bob Newhart was always that guy who was like, oh, he's that guy in that show that I know it's time to change the channel when it comes on type of actor.
So yeah. Now the Newhart show you're referring to is the one where he's operating the hotel in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you seen the one where he's a psychologist from the 70s?
No, I need to.
Yeah, it's got the woman who voiced Mrs. Krabappel from The Simpsons as his secretary.
Oh, Marsha something, right?
Yes, Marsha Wallace, is it, or something like that?
Yeah, I think that's her name.
Yep. You might again. Newhart has a type of humor that I understand a lot of people and my age group, our age group, doesn't quite get, but it's always worth checking out here and there because sometimes it's really insightful observations of things. But yeah, I'd say give the original one a shot first, because also the woman who plays his wife in the 70s series, she's gorgeous too.
I'll give it a watch because I've been watching a lot of 70s shows and movies lately. Like, just for the hell of it, I turned on the show The Love Boat on Paramount Plus to see what it's about, and I'm kind of into it right now.
It's addictive, man. You'll see Michael J. Fox on that in a few episodes.
Oh shit! I'm playing a game with myself. It's like, am I going to see a famous actor or this or that? And I was like, I bet there's going to be an actor that goes on to be a big movie star. And I saw Pat Morita. I was like, oh shit, Mr. Miyagi's in this one.
Yep.
I know I'm pretty sure Mark Hamill's in an episode at some point. I thought he was in like the early, because
He's
they
in the
filmed
Partridge Family. I know that.
He's in a lot of TV shows. Like,
Mhm.
he wasn't a complete nobody before Star Wars. He wasn't like a big name, but he was in some things.
He was. In fact, it's funny that you're talking about like Star Wars actors on television shows. My sister texted me this morning. She's like, oh my God, Carrie Fisher was in an episode of Smallville. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember. She was. She was actually one of the only good performances in that episode.
When I was a kid, I was so excited to watch Austin Powers because she was on the back of the box. And I thought Princess Leia was going to have a much bigger part in the movie than she did. And I mean, I went on to love Austin Powers. Honestly, at some point, I liked Austin Powers as much as Star Wars, especially when The Phantom Menace came out. And then the other movie was The Spy Who Shagged Me, which I think is still great to this day.
Yes.
Yeah, there was a point in time when I was a kid, it's like, look, if a Star Wars actor was in anything, I'd have to hunt it down just to watch their scene because I liked Star Wars that much. Gone are those days, but it was exciting back then. I always think of her in Scream 3 as well.
Oh, she was great in Scream 3.
Justin Proper, thank you very much. He says, weed is now legal in Ohio. All of my political dreams have been accomplished. I never have to vote again. Also, hi, ScriptDoctor.
Hi, Justin. Have you, I wonder if Justin Proper has expanded his movie knowledge, because last time we were talking, he saw Deliverance for the first time.
It's a good movie.
It's a great movie. He's got he has more movies to watch. I hope he's able to enrich himself that way.
Well, he lives very close to me, so he and I can get together and watch movies whenever we'd like. He actually works like 10 minutes from where I live, so I've hung out with him quite a few times in person. We would always joke. My favorite time hanging out with him, my favorite time ever was when he took me to all the Back to the Future locations, because he took me to, like, you name it. If it was shot outdoors for the first movie, he took me there. He took me to Biff's house, Strickland's house, Marty's house, Doc's house, the high school. Outside of going to Universal Studios proper, we hit up every Back to the Future location. We went to Twin Pines Mall. It was great. But we watched A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, and he had never seen it. And I always kind of like laugh at that movie. And the first thing he said is, "This is the gayest horror movie I've ever seen." And I laughed so hard at his reaction to the movie. I was like, "It really is. It really is."
Yeah, unironically too.
Mark Patton. If I ever meet that guy in person, I will probably. I don't own Nightmare on Elm Street 2 in any format, so if I did, I'd get it autographed. But I better get a Freddy Krueger autograph before he passes away, because I'll regret that. That's my superpower. Like Ethan would talk about how he would meet a celebrity and then they would die. I, have an opportunity to meet a celebrity, get their autograph or something before they pass away, and then they pass away, and it's like, well, that ship has sailed. Like, I missed out on Stan Lee and Adam West and Richard Kiel as Jaws. Like, no more.
I missed out on Stan Lee, Adam West, and Richard Donner. And it all through basically because I was literally on a plane when I found out that they arrived where I was leaving from.
Oh.
And it's like, son of a, get me off this plane, turn it around, please. I want to go meet. I want to say hi and thank you to some of their for their creations and their contributions.
I would geek out to meet Stan Lee, but I think at this point in my life, if they were still around, I'd have geeked out just as hard meeting Richard Donner, because that man, his movies were top notch. That's why we called him the patron saint of the channel for all those years. He still is.
He's the dude was really insightful on directing. He knew how to cut through genre veneers to get to the heart of a story. There's a reason he married the best producer in Hollywood, Lauren Schuler. Like, everybody loved her and still do love her to this day. She's got pretty good work ethic. Don't get on her bad side, of course, because she will chew you up and spit you out. But man, that's a guy who he figured out how to do a superhero movie. And then on top of that, he also figured out how to do buddy cop movies that worked. And he just knew how to find the heart and soul of a film. And you don't get many directors that are like that. And I'm so grateful that, Mel Gibson is kind of carrying on that methodology with his work. Whenever Mel Gibson directs a film, you can actually see a lot of Donnerisms in there. And it's like, that's cool. I mean, those skills are not going to go away anytime soon. And if I'm lucky enough to ever work with Mel Gibson, all I'm going to do is just ask him, like, tell me everything you've learned as a director. And if it's also attributed to Richard Donner, the more the better. Please just fill my brain up with it. I'm not a director, but I can definitely learn from those styles and incorporate it into my writing.
You pretty much said what I would say if I ever met him too.
Yeah.
Shogun Orda, thank you very much. He says, if the premise of Secret Wars is who the Beyonder likes more, good or evil, is that enough for normies? I could see comic lovers liking it, but maybe not normies.
It's a really good question.
Because we've seen that story in other mediums before, like on the Spider-Man 94 cartoon, I'm thinking it would work. Plus, it's just kind of like I don't know, it's like taking your best toys and putting them up against each other. And I think that premise will always work for people. It's like why the crossover works when it's got the right characters. It's just something exciting and different.
The question I have is, will Molecule Man be used? Because he was a big part of the Secret Wars, if memory serves.
I think he was. For as much as I enjoy my comic books, Secret Wars is not my favorite story. And so I don't return to it regularly. I've read through it maybe twice, and that's all she wrote.
Yeah, I think Secret Wars was the story arc that made me realize that Reed Richards is a horrible human being. And only because he figured out how to cure Ben and doesn't tell him. And he doesn't tell him for the dumbest reason ever, which is that he thinks Alicia and Ben are very shallow people when they're not. And I'm like, how could you think that of these two people that you've interacted with for years? Yeah, Reed Richards is evil.
I'm not the biggest Fantastic Four fan in general, so I always keep myself out of the conversation for FF stuff. But like I said in today's video, I don't think it's going to move the needle when it comes time to make those films over at Marvel. I think a lot of people on the internet are hyping up something that's going to be kind of middling at best.
Possibly, yeah.
Justin Proper, again, thank you. He says, Marvel should just focus on what works. Spider-Man works. That's about it. Everything else is trash.
I don't know. I think they nailed Captain America quite well.
Yep. As big of a Spider-Man fanboy as I am, I do like Captain America. I like Daredevil on Netflix. I enjoyed a lot of different superheroes. But and I liked Iron Man as well. I act like I didn't like those movies. The first one I loved. The second one was the third one was But Robert Downey Jr.'s thumbs up.
Well, the second one had something else going on that worked with it. Third one, I think, couldn't reconcile the Shane Blackisms with what Marvel is trying to do. But no, I think lots of Marvel characters work. I think She-Hulk is a great character in the comics, like the John Byrne run, and even the Savage She-Hulk run was fine for her. I think it worked out, especially when she was on the Fantastic Four. What they did with her post 1996 didn't really feel great for the character. But you figure out a way to capture that aspect of who She-Hulk is, you will have, I think people would be flocking to her like they did to Iron Man, because she's a good character and a fun character.
I've only known the John Byrne version up until the show, which I'm not into.
Yeah, that was a big disappointment for me. Because I think they got a good actor to play her too. That's the other part. It's like, oh yeah, Tatiana Maslany, she can do that character. She can do the mousy Jennifer Walters and voice the sexy, sultry She-Hulk. And oh, you're not going to use any of those talents with this actor in your show? What the hell?
I have never seen her in anything else.
Check her out in Orphan Black. She plays 5 clones of herself.
Oh, okay. That was on my radar.
There's a sequel series to it too, which I just learned about last week, and I'm terrified to look at it.
Because it's gonna be bad, or because you're just afraid of
Because it's a follow-up of what already kind of worked. And and it's made like Orphan Black ended before woke really took off. And now we've got a sequel series where woke is kind of still peppered through some modern day television shows. So that's why I'm hesitant for it. But I've seen her act on stage. She's a fellow Canadian. I saw her on Orphan Black. I know friends that worked on that show. She's got the skills and the chops. She's been in a couple of episodes of Parks and Recreation, which she was quite charming and great in. It's like, oh yeah, I can see her having the skills to really do this.
How did I not realize she was in that show? I love Parks and Rec.
Yeah, she's the nurse that almost dates Aziz Ansari's character.
Oh, shit. Okay. Fucking Tom Haverford.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of Aziz Ansari. I think he
me neither.
I think he sucks as a comic because I've heard his act. I'm like, dude, that's just your Parks and Recreations character, and that's deliberately not supposed to be a fun character. Like, you're not supposed to like him.
I already disliked him beforehand, before I discovered Parks and Rec during the pandemic, because he did that Netflix special live from Madison Square Garden. I was like, all right, stand up, let's watch this. I'm into comedy. And it was some of the most difficult shit to get through. I turned it off. I was like, nope, this guy's not for me. So then I saw Tom Haverford and I was like, all right, I like this show. And he's cool now. But
it's not him. Speaking of, like, I discovered Eliza Schlesinger. I can't say her last name, but she's this blonde chick who I think has a man writing her bits, because it's way too funny for your average 30-year-old comedian. But she's got these jokes about women and being sexy and hating the woke stuff and whatnot. Or at least that's the two specials I saw of her was very much anti-woke stuff, but like really, really clever jokes, especially about, like, bachelorette parties and things of that nature. I'm like, wow, where has she been? Why haven't we seen her in more stuff? And apparently I did see her in the Spencer for Hire reboot film with Mark Wahlberg. And if you haven't seen that, it's not too great. Doesn't really quite capture Spence for Hire. But yeah, I'd say give it a watch if you're a Spence for Hire fan-ish. But yeah, like she's actually quite funny. She has a Braveheart bit that's really clever. It's like, where have these comedians been hiding?
They're just, they're waiting because Amy Schumer's sucking up all the air.
Well, a woman that big does, yeah.
She was the only part of Only Murders in the Building that I couldn't stand. I was like, oh,
I'm so happy she was in it very briefly. Like, it was just...
Yep. Look, the perfect amount of Amy Schumer is no Amy Schumer, but the next of that is barely there. So it didn't hurt me, and it didn't hurt that show at all.
Right.
Modalicious says, great, women in combat. That's just what we need. I forgot what we were talking about to that point. Do you remember?
Let's see. Women in combat. Nope. Aside from, like, the Marvels being reshot, it's that. I mean, they're releasing a lot of images that are like at the end of the movie. Like, there's one where Brie Larson is holding the very bracelet that the bad guy has, and she's got like a tear in her uniform. And I'm like, why are you showing us that image?
Because they have no faith in this movie.
They shouldn't be trying to kill the film before it releases. That just makes things worse. But listen, I think you can find, a tall, sexy woman with a little bit of meat on her bones. You can believe that she can fight. I mean, people were really happy with Gina Carano, and she had a little bit more than enough meat on her bones because she was built good. It can happen. The other part too is, if you're going to have women in combat, lean into Aikido, lean into leverage, lean into objects that, level the playing field or give them an advantage. Don't just keep on doing the right hook and having the guy fall over so you effortlessly and easily, because that's boring.
Yeah, and one thing I hated in the way fight scenes were shot is that, like, post Born Identity, Dark Knight, you don't even know what you're looking at type of thing. That
the quick cuts, yeah.
I was watching Bruce Lee fight Chuck Norris the other night, and I was like, this is what's up. This is a fight scene. Like, give me this.
Oh man, like even the Jackie Chan stuff in the 90s where it's like, oh wow, this is one take.
Dude, I got nothing but the utmost respect for Jackie Chan. He is awesome. Like, you'll never hear me say an unkind word about Jackie Chan. Rush Hour 3, that's not his fault for why that movie ain't that great, but Jackie Chan, amazing. TLJ Screwjob says, don't you guys know Peter would let Miles take over? You mean like in the video game that I'm not buying after I saw that tweet?
Yeah. I'm still waiting for someone to emulate the PS2 Spider-Man 2 game for PC.
You mean the movie one?
Yeah, because the normal Spider-Man 2 for PC is not Spider-Man 2 from PS2.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah. That the weird one. Didn't we both discuss that we both played the demo of it or something?
Yeah, like you can't web anywhere on buildings. You have to web at the certain floating webbing symbol. It's like that. I'm not playing a game now. I'm playing a walkthrough.
It was a great demo to make me realize that the Xbox was going to have a better game than the PC. Like, that's why I'm in that weird window of people are like, PC Master Race, bro. I'm like, I still remember when PC games got the inferior versions of other games. Like, I get it.
Yep.
Not licensed games aren't everyone's forte. But for me, I like to play video games based on characters and things I like. And, having that shitty Spider-Man game turned me off. Oh, and James Bond Nightfire is terrible on PC. It's a completely different game than the console version. So if you're a James Bond fan, don't play the PC version of that.
Yeah, I'm still annoyed that Spider-Man Enter Electro was PlayStation only because the first one was PC, PlayStation, and that game was cool.
Oh yeah, that's still my favorite Spider-Man game. Underneath it all, like I do like the new one or the 2018 one. I thought that was a really good game. I went back to play Spider-Man for the original PlayStation. I got it emulated in 4K. It's so fun. It's got a great story. Like, this community, we talk about scripts and writing. They have not topped a good Spider-Man game in terms of writing. It's such, it gets everything right. It's a fun game. It's got Stan Lee doing narration. It's tongue-in-cheek. I mean, I was chuckling playing the whole damn game. So,
yeah,
give me more of that.
Carnage Doc Ock. And, I mean, when you get the magnesium to add to your webbing, that's pretty cool. And you're just like incinerating Carnage symbiotes.
Yeah. Up triangle, shoot this web ball.
Yep.
Burn them up. God, now I want to go play that.
I can still play that. I got a CD-ROM in my new computer. So.
Oh.
Yeah. But I don't have the part. Like, I think someone has probably emulated that thing for PC, but I don't know the controls.
I'll tell you this, though. If you ever get curious to try it out, there's an emulator called DuckStation that emulates PS1 games, and it'll render them, like I said, in 4K, but it does this, I think it's anti-dithering. You remember how on the PlayStation, the graphics would kind of jump around? They looked kind of like weird and fuzzy at times, and they would move with the camera?
Yeah,
This emulator redoes the math, and it makes everything a solid image, and it doesn't look weird. It's like what it's supposed to look like. Because the PlayStation system is, it was the video relay or whatever in the console that created that look. So when the people were making these games, it didn't look like that to them. But on the PlayStation, through the TV and stuff, it created that effect. And this eliminates it, and it looks great. So if you're ever curious of, if you want to get into that, let me know. I'll send you links on how to do it. It's real easy. It's a lot of dragging and dropping, but I hook up an Xbox controller and I play PlayStation games. It's great.
Oh, yeah. I'll hit you up for that. Absolutely.
Taylor Swift, greater than Disney Star Wars, says, could disinterest completely kill off the MCU?
Oh. Not entirely.
It'll exist in some form or fashion, but it's already no longer like the big thing. So it can go lower. We've all seen that episode of It's Always Sunny.
It can always go lower. I foresee if they can't right the ship on the cinematic side of things, the feature film side of things, you'll probably be getting a lot of Marvel cartoons like we did in the early 2000s. And not like TV shows, but like specials. Like there's like 3 Iron Man movies and there's a Black Panther movie, like cartoon movies that were all kind of terrible.
The only Black Panther thing I liked, I mean, the first movie's fine, so I'm not here to dump on it, but there was a motion comic. I really liked that. It had a terrible theme song, but it was a pretty cool motion comic. Thank you, Taylor Swift. Lester San Jose, the Skeptic Tank, says, hey guys, I listened to Script's treatise on how to make episodic work for Spider-Man's natural path or progression. For something practical, what was the most comical rebuttal Scripts heard for practical story advice?
The most comical rebuttal that I've heard for story advice. Well, there was one I heard from an executive producer just said I don't get it. Even though I meticulously explained it to them in under 3 minutes, which was actually 2 minutes shorter than they were expecting. Other parts are, too expensive, or my favorite is what's their flaw? I'm like, but I mean, the idea that they're obsessive, like that's usually one of the flaws I like to lean into is obsession. But people can get lost in obsession; they're not paying attention to, stop and smell the roses type of thing. And obsession is not a flaw that a lot of execs feel because they're looking for flaws that they identify with. And some studio execs' flaws are not flaws you really want to be incorporating into a moralistic superhero that's supposed to be a role model. so, so yeah, I don't believe in the flaw. That's the most comical one I can think of right now.
Our friend Justin Proper is back again. He says, I actually messaged Mark Patton on Facebook. He was very supportive. I saw Nightmare 2 a long time ago. When the heck did we watch it? When you stayed with me out west, and we were not sober, bro. So you watched it with me, and we had that comment. It would have been years ago at this point, though. So that was when we watched it. But I'll never forget. I've never heard anyone exclaim as the movie's over, this is the gayest horror movie ever. It's just too funny. Justin Proper also says, the Back to the Future tour was the best time I've ever had in LA. I meticulously planned it, and we avoided all traffic and were exactly on time. I'll never forget it. I'm glad I did it with you, Jeff. Proper, dude, that was one of the best days I ever had in LA as well. I mean, we hit it all. You had the Back to the Future, the musical soundtrack playing. The only way we could have done it better is if we had an actual DeLorean to drive around in. Other than that, man, like, it was the ultimate Back to the Future fan experience. Script, if you ever get to do something like that, man, do it, because it's so cool. Like, well, I know you've been to movie locations and stuff before, but
yeah,
Proper did it up right.
I haven't been to every location in Back to the Future, but I have hung out on the Town Square Hill Valley set a number of times.
Lucky.
I mean, it's used for so many things, like Gremlins. It was used for Gremlins. It was it was repurposed for oh God, what the heck show was it? I can't remember. It's on the tip of my tongue, but I've been there a few times because most of it's still standing relatively. It's a good lot. There's a replicated lot of it up here in Canada. I think it's in Mississauga somewhere, but it's got the same geography, street plan, everything. They just don't have the clock tower.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Guess they didn't save the clock tower. The referendum didn't go
not
through.
When they recreated it up here. No, they did not.
Did you see that DeLorean's coming out with a new car?
No.
Yeah,
I didn't even think they were fully around anymore, because they were just like a part. They were a car, and then you just bought parts up to upgrade your car as opposed to buying new models.
Yeah, and they used a lot of pre-existing parts. Like my mom's friend is a mechanic, and he talks about, oh yeah, it's got this part on this and that part on that, and he kind of just laughs at DeLoreans because the DeLorean is kind of one of those, from what I've heard from people that have driven them, at least the original ones, Back to the Future made them iconic, but in reality, the car was kind of shit. So
yeah, gull wings are not great because they hit the cars next to you as well when you're parked in.
Would you like to guess how much the new electric DeLorean costs?
Let's see. If it's electric, it's DeLorean, name brand stuff, 85 grand.
Try 250.
Wow. They really are expecting the name brand to be worth something.
Yeah, when I watched the video, our friend Joseph Bianowicz sent me a message about it, and I watched. I was like, "Man, this is cool! It's got all this awesome DeLorean stuff in it." It starts at $250,000. I went, "No, thank you. You can get an Aston Martin, James Bond's preferred mode of transportation, for about that price." And if I'm going to spend $250,000 on a car, I love Back to the Future, but I'd rather ride around in an Aston Martin and look cool as shit than a DeLorean. Like, DeLoreans are fine. I'm not here to dump on them, but for that kind of money, hell no. It should be under $100,000 for a fucking DeLorean.
And if it doesn't have a proper flux capacitor and destination point inside it, it's not worth that much, because you can get replica DeLorean's time machines for half of that.
That would be worth the money to me. But this new one has an electric odometer, and like the whole inside's changed. So like if you wanted to do a Back to the Future modification, you couldn't even do it on the new car. And they changed the wheel size. It's slightly different than the other one. And I mean, of course, you don't want it to be 1-to-1, but at the same time, people buy DeLoreans for two reasons. One, because they have a lot of money, or two, because they really like Back to the Future and want to, the car.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah. There will come a day where I gotta hold on though. I don't know if I can actually sit in the DeLorean because I might be too tall for it. So
yeah, that's a good question. Because see, I part of me wants to buy a DeLorean, but there's only two cars I really, really want to get. One is a replica of the 1960s Batmobile, because there's a guy that actually makes them, and they run really well. And then the other one is a Chrysler Turbine, which there's like, I don't think 6 left in existence, and they run on like anything that's combustible. So I could pour tequila in the gas tank and it would drive, because it's a turbine.
That's cool.
Yeah. So
I'll have to look what those look like. I've never seen those before.
It kind of looks a little bit like the 1960s Batmobile, because it was made by Chrysler in the 60s. And one of the stories is that one of the sales reps drove it out to Mexico, and the Mexican president made a joke like, "Can it run on tequila?" And he's like, "Hold on, let me check." And he called back the Chrysler head office and asked them that question. They said, "We'll call you in an hour." And they tested it out on the model engine that they had inside. And they said, yes, it will actually run on tequila. So they poured tequila in the gas tank and it worked. And they were able to drive around with the car that ran on tequila because it's a turbine engine. The reason it didn't take off huge is because mechanic shops would have to learn how to take apart and reassemble a turbine engine for a car. And that would have been very, very expensive. However, given the amount of computerized technology put in modern day cars, I think mechanics would much prefer to learn how to take apart and put back together a turbine engine.
I'm going to look that one up just to see what it's like. But if you ever do get that Batmobile, give me a call. I'll come visit we'll have to drive it to the Batcave.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, the James Bond car that I actually do want is the Vanquish from Die Another Day. Those were so overproduced and are such in low demand that they go for like $40,000. They used to be $225 back in 2002, and they're a whatever car. They got a V12 engine, so they're cool. I'm sure they drink gas like it's going out of style, but I think that's still a beautiful car. And then the one day car is the DB5, but I would commit sacrilegious acts to that car and modernize it. I would just like to get a shell of that car and basically make it modern, because it's a cool car, but I kind of want some modern amenities in it. So maybe I'll do that in the future.
That would be really cool.
And the first thing I'm going to do when I get it is play the James Bond theme. So, like a big old nerd. When I got my Omega Seamaster watch when I graduated from college, that was one of the first things I did. I had to go get like an extra link put into it. And then as soon as I did, I was like, all right, let's play the music from GoldenEye. And I stared at my watch. Justin Proper, one more. Thank you very much. He says, by the way, Nightmare 2 and being able to make out with guys in the video game Bully was my sexual awakening. Also, Script, I saw One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
It's a great movie.
Oh, dude. And not only is it a great movie, the award, if you find awards that it won, like video footage of them winning awards, from Jack Nicholson down to the lovely lady who played Nurse Ratched, they have gags with it. It's hysterical.
I'll have to check that out, because we read the book in high school and did a whole Ken Kesey section, and then we watched the movie. That was my introduction to the film, and it stuck with me. I've only seen it a handful of times since then, but McMurphy's a good character. I hate the ending though, man. Like, I mean, for obvious reasons. Like I like the ending from the artistic standpoint, but the feeling that it evokes when I watch it, I'm just like, oh, But if you ever watch It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, they do a great callback to it where Frank gets admitted to an institution, and he breaks out just like in the movie.
I gotta check that one out.
Yeah, it's a good one.
I've seen a lot of Always Sunny, but I haven't seen all of them. So
I stand by Fat Mac season, man. Season 7 is my ultimate favorite one.
is that also the season where they make Lethal Weapon 5?
No, I believe that's the season after Fat Mac.
Okay, yeah.
Because yeah, he's definitely not fat in that one because he does like they're in the shower and they like alternate roles because they, I don't know, Mac wants to do blackface, but Dennis doesn't.
Yes,
So,
because Fat Man 1 is where he's injecting insulin in his stomach, right?
yep, that's the very first episode of that.
Yeah, it's
season.
the very first episode of it. Yeah.
Going down to John Wanamaker's to get some Tommy Bahama shirts.
Mm-hmm.
So, Script, we have had a nice long show. We've had a lot of interesting topics, and we've caught up with all the super chats. Is there anything you'd like to say to the audience before we go?
Thanks for listening to us, guys, and thanks for your super chats and your questions and comments in the chat. It's been an awesome night. Always have a blast talking with you. I also miss Andrew. Can't wait for him to come back, but he's working hard over there.
Yeah, he's taking care of business, man. Congratulations to him and everybody involved.
Absolutely. I'm excited.
Folks, we'll be back on Thursday night with the podcast of not Iron Man. Sorry, I almost said Iron Maiden. Captain Marvel 2, The Marvels. So if you don't give a shit about the movie, that's fine. Still listen to the show because we're going to have a good time and we're going to cover more than just the movie. But you know, WCBS always gives you the best reviews, the most honest takes about these things. And we'll have a good time no matter how bad the film is because we're world class. So join us on Thursday then. Check out our video from Ollie's this past week. Check out the video I dropped today and be on the lookout for Wokebusters. I'm going to be dropping some information tomorrow since the new trailer for Ghostbusters Frozen Empire drops tomorrow. So be on the lookout for Wokebusters. I am almost done. The pages are beautiful. The work has been coming back from the other people involved with the book. I get these pages. My face lights up because as you know what it's like, Script, to create something. When the plan comes together right and you see that final product, you're like, yes. And Wokebusters, folks, if you think Stealing Solo is a cool book, wait till you read Wokebusters. It's funny, it's epic, it's action-packed. I've even gone back to a couple of those pre-release pages, and I've changed the Wokebusters car. I gave them a Wokebusters mobile now. So if you like Ecto 1 for the Ghostbusters, you're going to love what the Wokebusters drive. The guys have seen it. It's going to be featured heavily in the third act. So pretty much whatever you've seen of Wokebusters is going to be different. It's kind of like those movie trailers where you're like, oh, this looks pretty cool. I can't wait to see it. And then you see the movie, you're like, wow, they changed it, but it's even better. Wokebusters. Wait till you see the car, folks. It's pretty damn cool. But if you can't wait, if you want a great comic and you don't want to wait for Wokebusters, go to stealingsolo.com. Big orders getting shipped out tomorrow. Get yours added to the list. The website's powered by Shopify, so you get their safety and security, and everybody seems to like the book. I get comments each and every day about it, fan mail, letters, and all kinds of cool stuff like that. So from all of us here at WCBS, thank you for watching. Be smart, be safe, be cool, but always be excellent to each other. And here is your outro button.